Chapter 2544. Several innumerable tribulation true immortal servants who were also standing were scared out of their wits when they saw the scene in front of them. They had never thought that a golden immortal junior could be so intimate with a fierce man like Neza. The shock of hundreds of experts being killed at the same time was also diluted by the action of Yang Chen taking out the bloody demon vine flying sword to suck their blood. When these people looked at Yang Chen again, they no longer looked at him as if he was a golden immortal junior, but with a kind of fear from the bottom of their hearts. Interesting. Neza was stunned. He did not expect that Yang Chen not only did not stop him from killing people, but also cooperated with him and took out a bloody demon vine flying sword to suck their blood. Neza was very surprised. While talking, in order to cooperate with Yang Chen, Neza took the initiative to gather a series of experts together so that Yang Chen's flying sword could suck their blood. While watching, he asked, "This flying sword is a little interesting. Is it made of bloody demon vine?" Yang Chen nodded. Neza was indeed worthy of his title. He could tell at a glance that it was a flying sword made of bloody demon vine. After watching for a while, Neza also showed a puzzled look on his face and asked in confusion, "Isn't your natal magic weapon the immortal chopping saber? Why does this flying sword also have the smell of the natal flying sword?" In the face of Neza's question, Yang Chen did not hide it. He directly told him the secret that his natal flying sword was actually the great yin-yang 5 elements flying sword. Unlike when he just met Neza, he did not need to be so cautious. Moreover, at this time, it was really easy for Neza to kill Yang Chen. A cultivator had 10 natal flying swords? If word of this got out, it would definitely shock countless people. At least, Neza was stunned as if he could not understand it at all. "Senior, don't you also have 3 natal magic weapons?" Yang Chen did not understand Neza's surprise. He himself had many natal magic weapons, such as the fire-tipped spear, the heaven and earth ring, and the armillary sash. How could he not understand that Yang Chen had 10 flying swords? Of course, Neza also had a firestorm wheel, but it was just a flying magic weapon like Yang Chen's dark sea shuttle, not a natal magic weapon. "Are you and of my natal magic weapon?" Neza was very unhappy with Yang Chen's questioning and replied angrily, "I have 3 heads and 6 arms, and 3 life source magic weapons are just right. You are just a sea of consciousness. Isn't it stupid to control 10 life source magic weapons?" At this time, Yang Chen remembered that when Neza encountered a strong enemy, he really used the 3-headed and 6-armed Dharma body. 3. This meant that Neza had at least 3 seas of consciousness. This was countless times more powerful than the 2 dragons that Ao Sin had grafted onto Long Can and Long Quebec. Controlling 3 natal magic treasures was simply a matter of course. It was rare for an expert like Neza to be interested in his yin-yang 5 elements flying sword. It would be a waste if he did not take this opportunity to ask for advice. After Neza had finished dealing with those experts, Yang Chen could not help but ask for advice. Neza did not express his opinion. He told everyone to go on their way. Everyone entered the Mountain River geographical map, including Neza's new slaves. Their current mission was to help Neza cultivate good medicinal herbs, regardless of the cost. Yang Chen's reverse refining of elixirs worked well, and Neza also benefited a lot. However, Neza also discovered that the medicinal materials Yang Chen used to refine were somewhat unfashionable. They might be good medicinal materials for ordinary cultivators, but they were nothing for those infinite tribulation true immortals, let alone experts like Neza. What the servants needed to do was to first contribute the best medicinal ingredients they had, and then work hard to cultivate even better medicinal ingredients. The better the medicinal materials Yang Chen used, the better the effect of Neza's recovery. This was Neza's intention. The mysterious sky underworld sea shuttle continued on its way. Neza and Yang Chen sat down at the table again and began to talk about Yang Chen's natal magic weapon while drinking. "The concept of your magic weapon container is really good. Hearing Yang Chen's detailed explanation of the function of the sword case, Neza could not help praising it. However, Neza still gave a very pertinent opinion. However, this concept has little to do with the spiritual realm. If you want to achieve something in the immortal realm, I advise you not to do this. Senior, please give me some advice. Yang Chen respectfully toasted Neza and asked for his advice seriously. What's wrong with that? Neza drank Yang Chen's toast and said with a smile, you could have achieved something in elixir refining and equipment refining. Why did you only choose elixir refining? Nothing else. I just want to specialize, Yang Chen answered honestly. See, you know the reason very well. Neza spread out his hands and asked with a smile, since you are so clear about elixir refining and equipment refining, why did you make the same mistake in refining your natal magic weapon? But this is to complement my great yin-yang 5 elements technique. Yang Chen answered quickly. If I only cultivate one attribute of the flying sword, wouldn't it be greatly unbalanced? Of course you don't need to cultivate only one attribute. Neza glanced at Yang Chen and said disdainfully, you have the guts to refine the immortal beheading platform. Why don't you refine all the great yin-yang 5 elements flying sword together into one flying sword? Do you really think that the immortal beheading platform only has one attribute of metal? Neza's words made Yang Chen's eyes widen. He could not say anything. Yang Chen actually did not think of such a simple reason. Yang Chen despised himself a little. He had been thinking about refining the immortal beheading platform into the immortal beheading saber, but he had forgotten that the immortal beheading platform did not only have one attribute of metal. Thank you for your advice, Senior. This time, Yang Chen was sincerely grateful to Neza. His words woke up the dreamer, and it could be said that Yang Chen was enlightened. It's not too late to understand now. Neza smiled and continued, with your cultivation in the mortal world and the spiritual realm, it's still a little difficult for you to perfectly fuse the 10 great yin-yang 5 elements flying swords. It's just right to do it in the immortal realm. Yang Chen bowed again and began to think about how to start this matter. But before he started, Yang Chen still had to find time to discuss with Brother Li Cheng in case there were any problems. Looking at the direction you are going, are you planning to go to Beihai? After talking about Yang Chen's natal Dharma treasure, Neza finally asked about Yang Chen's destination for the first time after leaving the capital city. As far as I know, there is no suitable place to stay in the sect. I dare not hide it from you, Senior. There is an immortal master's tomb there that has not been discovered yet. Yang Chen answered honestly, if you go there to clean it up, it's not worse than any big sex mountain. Chapter 2545. Aren't you afraid of bad luck? Neza obviously disagreed with Yang Chen's idea of directly using the immortal tomb as the sex mountain gate. He said with disdain, it's so troublesome to find a place for a sect to stand on? Just find a small sect and kill them. Those who cooperate will be annexed, and those who don't cooperate will be killed. Wouldn't that be enough? Only Neza could say such domineering words. There were many cultivators in the immortal world, except for those disciples of the super sect, which cultivator dared to speak so domineeringly. Yang Chen couldn't help but smile bitterly. At this point, Yang Chen and Neza had no common language. If it was so simple, then why would Yang Chen bother to do this? He would have done it long ago. The spiritual world had done this before, but that was because Chiman's sect wanted to provoke the head of the palace master and was killed by Yang Chen and his group of ascended companions. He also killed their backer, Mr. Yixian. But even so, it was just a temporary foothold for Chunyang Palace. There was only one earth immortal spirit vein in that small territory. How could it provide for the development of Chunyang Palace in the future? However, Neza's unlucky words were indeed a bit true. If there was no other way, who would be willing to use other people's tombs as their own residence? Why, do you have to find the tomb of an immortal monarch? Neza looked at Yang Chen's expression and guessed what he was thinking. He couldn't help but ask curiously, destroying a few small sect won't be enough to grab enough territory? Yang Chen nodded very seriously. His serious expression made Neza feel even more strange. He asked again, which sect are you from? Are you very powerful? My sect is Chunyang Palace. Neza had a question, so of course, Yang Chen had to answer. So far, this was the first time Neza had asked Yang Chen about his sect. Never heard of it. Neza had no impression of the Chunyang Palace mentioned by Yang Chen. It was normal. Before the upheaval of the Heavenly Court, there was no one in the Chunyang Palace who had ascended except for the ancestors. How could Neza know about it? It was normal that he had never heard of Chunyang Palace. After saying that, Neza asked, "Who's the ancestor?" The ancestor's surname is Li, and his name is Iwakashita Masaru. Yang Chen replied respectfully. He was answering the ancestor's name, so he couldn't be sloppy. It's so troublesome. You can just say Li Yancheng's name. Why do you have to go up and down? Neza was also dissatisfied with this answer. After thinking for a while, he said the same words again, "Never heard of it." Yang Chen was speechless, but he didn't know how to express it to Neza. Just as he was about to speak, Neza suddenly revealed a pondering expression. "I seem to have heard of it somewhere, but I can't remember." The ancestor of a small sect might not be taken seriously by a master like Neza. Yang Chen really couldn't make the ancestor proud in front of Neza in this aspect, so he could only shut up bitterly. "You're such a small sect. It's enough to have a foothold. Do you really need a big territory?" This was what Neza didn't understand. A little-known small sect could only have a few dozen disciples at most. So what if they occupied a large territory? Small sect? Yang Chen didn't even want to complain at this moment. Perhaps before Yang Chen's rebirth, Chunyang Palace was really a small sect. But now, the scale of Chunyang Palace, the number of disciples, the number of masters, and the size of the territory were completely out of reach of a small sect. Looking at Yang Chen's constipated expression after he said that it was a small sect, Neza became interested. Is Chunyang Palace a little bigger? It was more than a little bigger. Yang Chen could only nod silently and hard. This made Neza more interested. He asked again excitedly, "Is it at the level of a third-rate sect?" Yang Chen didn't say anything, but still nodded hard. "Second-rate sect?" Neza asked again. "Yes." This time, Yang Chen said one more word, "Yes," and continued to nod hard. "First-rate?" Neza raised the standard again. A sect that he had never heard of was at most a first-rate sect, right? Yang Chen's nodding speed was a little faster, and the number of nodding also increased a few times. "Has it reached the level of a super sect?" Neza didn't believe it, so he asked with his eyes wide open. This time, Yang Chen didn't let Neza down. He nodded again. Neza was a little surprised. Where did a super sect come from? How did it appear out of nowhere? However, he still wanted to find out how big the scale of Chunyang Palace was in the spiritual realm now. He quickly asked again, "Your Chunyang Palace can't be bigger than Xiantian sect in the spiritual realm, right?" To Neza's great shock, Yang Chen nodded again. Xiantian sect in the spiritual realm had long disappeared. Of course, Chunyang Palace was much bigger than Xiantian sect in the spiritual realm. Yang Chen had been puzzled. He had already told him about the Zhao family, but why didn't Neza seem to remember it? Maybe it was because he focused on the Zhao family, and the cultivators didn't talk much about it, so Neza didn't remember it. However, he couldn't let Neza misunderstand. Yang Chen quickly explained, "Xiantian sect in the spiritual realm has been destroyed. Chunyang Palace was lucky enough to absorb the remaining disciples of Xiantian sect and occupy its territory. Actually, I'm just here to find a good place to do so. I seem to have mentioned it." Although Yang Chen had told Neza about some things about the Zhao family, he hadn't told Neza about it. So when Yang Chen said that Chunyang Palace had replaced Xiantian sect, Neza's expression was very interesting. Now that you mention it, I remember you said that the Zhao family killed several super sect, including Xiantian sect, right? Neza finally remembered that Yang Chen had told him some things about the spiritual realm in the mortal world. He finally connected the dot. It wasn't that Neza's memory was bad. It was just that most of Neza's attention was on healing. He just listened to Yang Chen as a story. It had nothing to do with him. Even the Zhao family paid more attention because of Heavenly King Li's pagoda. Neza didn't care about other places at all. When he suddenly learned that the Taishaman in the mortal world and Xiantian sect in the spiritual realm had been destroyed, even Neza couldn't help but laugh. I thought that guy was so powerful after he became the Jade Emperor. It's only been a few thousand years, and their roots have been dug out. Ha 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 ha. Neza's injuries were caused by the current Jade Emperor and his many experts. Now that he heard that the Xiantian sect was so unlucky and became the leader of the heavenly court in name, Neza laughed happily. He was indescribably happy. Chapter 2546. It was indeed inappropriate for a sect that was larger than the Xiantian sect to snatch the territory from a few small sects. Neza also understood why Yang Chen had to find a suitable place to build his sect. Previously, Neza thought that it was just finding a territory for a small sect with 30 to 50 cultivators, so he didn't think it was a big deal. Now that he found out that he was looking for a mountain for a super sect that might be larger than the Xiantian sect in the future, he immediately became interested. If he had judged Yang Chen as a lucky cultivator and the commander of the Immortal beheading platform, now that he had the backing of a super sect and the influence of the Tao ancestors' direct disciple, it could be said that Yang Chen would definitely become an influential figure in the celestial world in the future. Neza was indeed a killing god, but it didn't mean that he didn't use his brain. Not to mention anything else. Just hiding in the Immortal beheading platform's memorial archway while hiding was absolutely an unexpected stroke of genius. How could such a smart guy not realize the benefits of befriending a future big figure? From the moment he understood this, the way he looked at Yang Chen was already very different. At this time, Neza had secretly made up his mind to help more so that he could get more favors and merits in the future. This was a great benefit. The cultivators who were chasing Yang Chen within 500 kilometers had been killed by Neza. As for those who were further away, Neza didn't care about them. If he killed too many, he was afraid that people would find out that it was the red armillary sash. It wasn't worth it if strong enemies chased after him. Therefore, there weren't many cultivators following behind Yang Chen for the time being. He didn't care about the situation around him at all and just rushed to his destination. As for the pursuers who were further away, he didn't care about them as long as they didn't come up and get in his way. His destination, the North Sea, was very far away. It was so far that almost all the cultivators in the celestial world thought that it was a wasteland. It was the suburbs of the suburbs. If there wasn't a reason that they had to go there, no one would be willing to come in this direction. Apart from the mountainous region, there was almost nothing here. There were no spirit veins, no mineral deposits, and the only thing here was perhaps danger. All kinds of wild and powerful demons might be hiding in some secret corner, waiting to ambush anything that appeared in his sight. It could even be said that the disadvantages of training here were greater than the advantages. What was even more displeasing was that this was a barren land in the immortal world. It was also a place where all kinds of devil chi and demon chi gathered. From the capital city of the heavenly court to the vast space around it, all kinds of formations were used to force the demonic chi and demonic chi to these barren lands. The mysterious Heaven Dark Sea shuttle rushed out of the heavenly court's array formation and plunged directly into the North Sea. At this point, Yang Chen and the others no longer had the protection of the heavenly court. They would have to rely on themselves from now on. Controlling the shuttle, Yang Chun found the specific direction and flew at high speed again for a full 2 months, and then put away the mysterious Sky Dark Sea shuttle. Yang Chun, the 4 women, and Neza appeared in this mountainous area. "Why aren't you flying anymore?" Neza's injuries hadn't healed yet, so he hated being in danger. Seeing Yang Chun put away the shuttle, he immediately asked. "We need to walk the rest of the way." Yang Chun explained slightly. "Any flying magic treasure will be rejected by the Immortal Lord's tomb, and we will unknowingly fly somewhere else." There weren't any large-scale pursuers here, so Neza wasn't afraid. He released his divine sense and swept around unscrupulously. Neza hadn't been so unrestrained in a long time. He only felt that it was really comfortable to be able to be so unrestrained without worrying about being chased. After a round, Neza didn't find anything. This was a rare thing. One had to know that even though Neza's injuries hadn't healed, his basic strength was still there, and so was the strength of his divine sense. After such a round of exploration, he actually didn't find anything. It was almost 99% likely that there really was nothing here. If it really was discovered by Senior, this immortal tomb would have been dug out long ago. Yang Chun smiled and said to Neza. This wasn't Yang Chun joking with Neza. Even though the North Sea was barren, it wasn't that no one had ever been here before. On the contrary, experts had been here many times. If the Immortal Lord's tomb could be easily found, as Yang Chun said, it would have been dug out a long time ago. When cultivators came to the immortal world, they were basically not willing to walk in the wild anymore. The Immortal Lord had already considered this when he set up the immortal tomb. As long as the formation was set up with magic treasures, it would unknowingly lead the cultivators to the wrong place without them noticing. Even someone as powerful as Neza couldn't find any abnormality in this place. The real Immortal Lord's tomb had to be entered on foot, and it would take more than 2 months. This requirement was rarely met by cultivators in the immortal world. This was also the fundamental reason why the Immortal Lord's tomb could be preserved until now. It was an immortal lord, an infinite tribulation true immortal. Cultivators at this level weren't completely immortal. Even though their lifespan was many times longer than mortals, when their cultivation stagnated to a certain point, they would still die. When some powerful immortal lords felt that they had no hope of improving, they would usually choose a place with excellent feng shui to find a place to rest after death. Usually, the immortal tomb would be set up even more exaggerated than the tombs of emperors in the mortal world. Not to mention all kinds of wealth and magic treasures, there would also be all kinds of powerful formations set up in the immortal tomb. This required the support of a strong spirit vein to support the needs of the formation, so that it wouldn't be easily discovered by cultivators. In some extreme cases, the immortal tomb might be called an immortal tomb, but what was lying in it might not be a corpse, but a cultivator in hibernation. Most immortal tombs were real tombs to some tomb robbers. Yang Chen's family and Neza were now playing the role of tomb robbers. This kind of experience didn't seem very special to Yang Chen, but for the girls and Neza, it seemed to be a completely new experience. At least, Neza seemed to be having fun. Walking in the front, Yang Chen held the immortal beheading saber in his hand, and Xiao Tian wrapped around his wrist. They advanced forward all the way. If other cultivators saw that Yang Chen actually used the immortal beheading saber that was enhanced by Xiao Tian to open the way, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop. Such a reckless waste of God's gift was really too much. But in Neza's eyes, it seemed to be so natural. Not only that, Neza was also holding the heaven and earth ring in his hand all the time. He was always ready, as if he would smash the stone blocking the way in the next moment. It was really incomprehensible. Was this the natal magic treasure of an immortal used in this way? When Yang Chen cut off a tangled vines and led the way out of the dense forest, he stood under a huge tree. A smile appeared on Yang Chen's face. "We're here." Chapter 2547. Neza watched as Yang Chen found a hidden tree hole in the tree, which was so thick that it would take dozens of people to wrap their arms around it. Then, he led everyone into it. But he couldn't understand what happened next. The tree hole was not big, just enough for people to go in, but the space inside was not small. It was as if they had entered another world from the tree hole outside. Obviously, this was the entrance to a cave. As soon as they entered the entrance, Yang Chen asked Neza to hide Yang Chen's family and Neza. Neza did not refuse. Once the red armillary silk wrapped everyone, they immediately blended into the surrounding environment perfectly. No matter how strong the divine senses of an expert were, they would not be able to find out that there were cultivators hiding here. On the archway of the immortal beheading platform, Neza relied on this trick to avoid the eyes and ears of those innumerable true immortal heavenly soldiers. However, this could only deceive cultivators who were much weaker than Neza. If there were really cultivators who were about the same cultivation as Neza, they could basically accurately find them as long as they carefully investigated. "What are we doing?" Neza asked unhappily. He had just entered an immortal lord's tomb, yet he had to sneakily hide like this. This was completely different from the scene he had anticipated, where he would charge into the tomb and start a massacre, destroy countless mechanisms and arrays, and finally enter the real tomb to unlock the secrets of the immortal tomb. What made Neza even more unhappy was that in order to hide a little more, they had shrunk the red armillary silk as much as possible. Moreover, the position they were in was the narrowest part of the cave. If they took up a little more space, they would block the entrance of the cave. Now, there was just a gap for one person to enter and exit normally. No one would have thought that there were 5 people hiding behind a layer of red armillary silk. Yang Chen and the 4 women were hugging each other, while Neza could only squat on the ground a fist away from Yang Chen. He looked like an old farmer in the field in the mortal world. If others saw him like this, Neza would probably want to kill someone. If hundreds of experts don't die in this immortal monarch's tomb and use their blood to open the seal, how are we going to enter? Yang Chen rolled his eyes at Neza, who was right in front of him. Now he was talking to Neza more and more unbridled. He was not as respectful as before. "There are so many lives, where can we find them? If we don't let those guys following us explore the way, are you willing to rush in regardless of your injuries and cultivation?" These words made Neza speechless. As Yang Chen said, if it was Neza's usual way of doing things, it would be the simplest and most straightforward to kill all the way. The problem was that Neza had yet to recover from his injuries. If he attacked the immortal tomb forcefully, his injuries would definitely worsen. Nobody knew how many people wanted to kill Neza. Neza didn't want to lose his strength in a place that had nothing to do with him. As the 2 of them spoke, the 4 women just listened quietly. Looking at Neza's speechless expression, the 4 women laughed in their hearts. No matter how powerful an expert was, as long as they were with their husband for a long time, they would always feel helpless. Neza was no exception. Fortunately, the red armillary sash formed a separate space inside. Even if they spoke inside, it would not be heard outside. The only thing they were unhappy about was that the red armillary sash could not form a separate space. They could only stay here sullenly. If they hid in the mountain river geographical map, the cultivators that entered would immediately be repelled by the formation here. Unless they went back the way they came, they would definitely be repelled out of the immortal lord's tomb. Therefore, they could only wait quietly. The cultivators following them were very patient. Last time, Neza killed a large number of cultivators that were close to him. After that, no cultivators dared to follow too close. Even for safety reasons, those guys would wait until they were sure that there was no danger before entering. After waiting for a long time, Yang Chen lay in a pile of makeup and enjoyed himself. Neza grabbed a wine gourd and drank silently. Suddenly, Neza's eyes lit up. "They're here! 1, 2, 3. The red armillary sash was Neza's natal Dharma treasure. He had no intention of sharing it with Yang Chen. Therefore, only Neza knew how many cultivators had passed by. Neza counted them one by one. He would stop after a few counts, and then continue counting after a while. Needless to say, those cultivators were definitely not in the same batch. They entered in batches and would definitely not squeeze through this hole that could only accommodate one person at a time. It had to be said that Yang Chen's legend in the spiritual realm had aroused the interest of many people. There were more than 1,000 cultivators following Yang Chen, not to mention the hundreds of people who had been following him before that had been killed by Neza. What kind of fascinating secret do you have? Neza looked at Yang Chen in confusion. Why are these guys pouncing on me like moths to a flame? I killed Tao Ancestor and Jade Emperor and Queen Mother together. Yang Chen looked at Neza and smiled. Don't you want to know what they left for me before they died? Neza raised his head and looked into Yang Chen's eyes for a long time. His eyes were also flickering. After a while, he shook his head and said, I don't want to know. Why, Senior? This time, it was Gao Yu who asked the question. She was very curious why Neza did not want to know such an attractive secret. After all, what Yang Chen said was not a lie. Was Neza really not tempted? It's meaningless. Neza answered straightforwardly. Except for Tao Ancestor, the other guys were nothing in my eyes when they were alive. What could they leave for me to covet after they died? Thinking of Neza's reputation in the heavenly court, it seemed that what he said was not a lie. Although Neza did not directly show it in front of Yang Chen, the pride in his words was not concealed at all. Maybe there are some 9 transformations golden pills that can cure your injury, Senior? Gao Yu seemed to be naughty. She continued to ask, even if you don't want their magic treasures and wealth, maybe you don't want the healing pills? If it was 50 years ago, I would definitely want it. Neza looked at Gao Yu with a complicated gaze. Although it was Gao Yu who asked, Neza knew that Yang Chen must also want to know, so he said without hiding anything, but now, it doesn't mean much to me. Even Yang Chen couldn't help but widen his eyes in surprise when he heard Neza's words. Neza's injury was so serious, but he didn't want the 9 transformations golden pill to cure it? My cultivation has not improved for a long time. Neza looked at Yang Chen and explained, but this injury and your healing process gave me the hope of improvement that I haven't seen for a long time. I don't want such a good thing to be ruined because of a few pills. Chapter 2548. Your Tao is different from mine. It's not a big deal. Neza was not surprised at all, but he still praised Yang Chen. At least you're stronger than many cultivators in the immortal realm. Even if they have reached the level of innumerable tribulation true immortals, they still haven't found their own cultivation Tao. The owner of this immortal tomb is a poor guy. He found his own Tao, so why would he waste his life in this realm? These guys outside are stupid and can't figure it out. Neza did not hide the deep contempt in his words. If you want to follow this Tao of robbers, you should stick to it from the beginning to the end. But they pretend to be sanctimonious all the time. Whether it's Tao sect, demon sect, or even the demon clan, they still suppress their nature and hide their true nature in the immortal realm. This kind of cultivators will only be like this for the rest of their lives. This junior's Tao is different from the senior's Tao. Yang Chen pondered slightly and replied to Neza. This time, he was discussing Tao with Neza, so he called him Senior and Junior again. Senior, you cut off your emotions and stand on the top of all immortals. But this Junior doesn't cultivate this Tao. If it weren't for them, if it weren't for the sect, this Junior might not even be able to reach this step. Thank you for your advice, Senior. Yang Chen thanked him very seriously. Otherwise, Yang Chen would have to give Neza a big salute. I want to be direct. Yang Chen was very indignant. I have to be able to beat these guys. Although Yang Chen could easily kill golden immortals and even some zenith heaven golden immortals, his cultivation was not enough to fight against a real innumerable tribulation true immortal. That was why he said that. Along the way, Yang Chun could not get rid of the existence of the women, especially Gao Yu, who had accompanied him all the way to this point. It was also because of Gao Yu that Yang Chen was so concerned about the sect. It was they who accompanied him all the way to this point. Even the sect was also because of Gao Yu's reason, so that Yang Chen was so concerned. The other women also expressed their gratitude. Although Neza's words were meant for Yang Chen, it might be a warning to them. The same principle applied to them as well, and everyone benefited greatly from it. Take your time. Neza smiled and didn't explain anything. He knew what Yang Chen meant. Experts are also newcomers. There will be such a day. After all, Yang Chen was just a junior at the early golden immortal realm. How could he help Neza, who was at the peak of the innumerable tribulation true immortal, to improve his cultivation? It can be considered as having a purpose. Yang Chen didn't hide his thoughts and said to Neza, when more and more experts risk their lives to tell other cultivators that they won't gain anything from following me, they will also die. In the future, I will have more freedom to do whatever I want. However, Neza said it in a very serious manner without any hypocrisy. This could only mean that Yang Chen really did it. Those guys inside are going to die. After coming out, Yang Chen stretched his body and said to Neza, who was rubbing his waist, let's stay outside for a few days and go in when it's quiet inside. What are we going to do now? After talking about these formal topics, Neza seemed to be a little impatient. Those who want to go in have all gone in. What are we going to do? However, in his previous life, Yang Chen spent his time thinking about Gao Yu. Without Gao Yu, Yang Chen didn't even know if he could hold on until the moment of his rebirth. Because of the same feelings, Yang Chen finally became Gao Yu's disciple again. Although Yang Chen later showed that he was a playboy, Gao Yu had always been unshakable in Yang Chen's heart. The reason was very clear. In the end, it was because of the cultivation base. In fact, it was not only in the immortal world, but also in the mortal world and the spiritual realm. No matter what, one's dignity was earned by oneself, nothing else. During the healing process, Neza actually saw the hope of improving his cultivation. This sounded quite fantastical. When Neza was cultivating, he even killed his own father and other cultivators. He was definitely on the path of cutting off his emotions. Yang Chen even thought that Neza might be more suitable than Yang Chen to subdue the immortal slaying saber and take this path. That's also a way. Neza nodded and smiled. However, the effect is still not direct enough. In addition, if you don't have to be burdened by the sect, don't have to worry about so many things, and don't have these wives to distract you, your cultivation should be able to improve faster. At this time, Neza was very talkative. He said in a guiding tone, with your aptitude and your comprehension, if you can focus on cultivation, you will definitely be in more than this realm now. Yang Chen's answer also strengthened his heart. Yang Chen had never regretted his path. At the same time, Yang Chen's answer also moved the four women around him. Even though no one said anything, Yang Chen could feel their affection for him from their eyes. Let's go out. Yang Chen directly gave an answer that stunned Neza. Then, after Neza unconsciously let go of the red armillary sash, he quickly got out of the tree hole with the women. From the last sentence, everyone could tell that Neza really didn't care about treasures and wealth. He stuck to his cultivation path. As Neza said, this was more important than treasures and wealth. Yang Chen could be sure that the path would definitely be easier to walk on, and his cultivation would definitely be higher than now. Putting aside everything else, Brother Li Cheng was a living example, and he was much stronger than him. However, no matter what kind of Tao you have, you must remember one thing. Neza solemnly reminded him, don't be tempted by external things. Even 10,000 treasures of the Jade Emperor and Queen Mother can't compare to the achievements of your cultivation path. Remember this. If he didn't have Gao Yu in his cultivation, would he still be himself? Yang Chen asked himself, and the answer was no. During the pondering just now, Yang Chun thought of a possibility. If he didn't reject the Tao ancestor and became the last disciple of the Tao ancestor, maybe he would have taken a different path. Speaking of which, I should have killed as many experts as you, right? I even killed the Tao ancestor, the Jade Emperor and Queen Mother. But why do those guys tremble in fear when they see you, and want to get benefits from me when they see me? Yang Chun was obviously venting his dissatisfaction. After Neza said this, even Gao Yu and the others looked at Yang Chun, wanting to hear Yang Chen's answer. It seemed that they wanted to know what position they had in Yang Chen's heart. Do you always trick people like this? Neza regained the casual atmosphere between him and Yang Chun. Or do you have other intentions? Chapter 2549. Outside the tomb of the immortal monarch, the Yang family and Neza lived for another month. 4 cultivators who had long lives, a mere month was something they could afford to waste. They could afford to wait, and they had the patience to do so. Compared to the cultivators struggling for their lives in the immortal graveyard, living a peaceful life for a month was like the difference between heaven and hell. Some people are really patient. When Yang Chun decided to enter the tomb again, Neza looked in a certain direction and said meaningfully, "Smart people always live to the end." "In fact, they're not smart enough," Yang Chun replied with a smile. "If they were really smart, they wouldn't have gotten involved in this. Wouldn't it be better to use this kind of patience and forbearance on cultivation?" Although some cultivators followed Yang Chun and Neza into the tomb, there were still many so-called smart people who weren't so easily fooled. They still waited outside carefully. They succeeded in waiting for Yang Chen's group to come out and leisurely wait for the cultivators who entered the tomb to die. As long as they followed Yang Chen's footsteps, this last chance would still be theirs. Neza's red armillary sash was very powerful, but it couldn't be used too often. Otherwise, people would guess Neza's identity. It wasn't a good choice when Neza's injuries were only 1/10 healed. Therefore, both Neza and Yang Chun didn't want to use Neza's power at this time and place in case the news got leaked. Entering the tree hole again, Yang Chun didn't have to be so careful anymore. He walked in front. The 4 women followed behind Yang Chun. Neza, the strongest among them, was at the back. As Yang Chun expected, the tomb seemed to really need the blood of strong cultivators to break the seal. The mottled blood everywhere made Yang Chen's journey unobstructed. The inside of the tomb was very large, just like the tomb where Madame Bai was. Every once in a while, there would be some traces of fighting and destruction of the array. The traces were very obvious, and sometimes the blood and limbs left behind were also very obvious. Sometimes, the road would diverge into several forks, each of which would have traces of battles and cultivators entering or leaving their mark. In these places, however, Yang Chun seemed to be very familiar with the structure inside. He easily chose a direction and went all the way. This immortal tomb was not told to Yang Chun by the prisoners in the immortal beheading stage, but Yang Chen's memories from his previous life. According to the development of his previous life, this immortal graveyard should have been discovered by experts 3,000 years later. Then, a large number of experts would forcefully open it and take away almost all the things inside, leaving behind an empty space in the graveyard for the younger generation of a certain sect to come in and study the arrays inside. In his previous life, Yang Ming had also visited this place, so he was very familiar with the route. However, now everyone, including Neza, thought that this was the news that Yang Chun got from a big shot who was killed before he died. No one suspected that it was for other reasons. With this reason, it was enough to explain a lot of things that Yang Chun would do in the future. Almost without any twists and turns, Yang Chun and his group entered the innermost chamber of the tomb. However, before approaching the tomb, they still took a slight detour. The reason why it was said that there were almost no twists and turns was also because of this detour. There was clearly nothing in front of them, and it seemed that they could just walk past it. However, Yang Chun made a big fuss and took a big detour here before stepping into the tomb. When Yang Chen took the lead and stepped into the tomb, a weak voice came from inside. I knew that you must know the layout inside. No one was surprised. When they were outside, they already knew that there was a seriously injured guy inside. When Yang Chen came in, he did not even open the Tai Chi golden ball. Your Excellency is really an expert. I admire you for being able to hold on until now with such serious injuries. Yang Chen really admired him. He looked at the cultivator leaning against the wall and said, Yang Chen. The man held his breath, as if he was waiting for Yang Chen's arrival. After confirming that it was Yang Chen, he suddenly used the last of his strength and shouted at Yang Chen, You set such a strong ambush just to kill us. More than 1,000 experts died in your hands. Don't you feel guilty at all? Why should I feel guilty? Yang Chen smiled at the figure who could not stand up and asked, I didn't kill you. I didn't even touch you with my little finger. I don't know you at all. What does your life and death have to do with me? Can you deny that they followed you in? The man seemed to want to argue with Yang Chen before he died. He retorted weakly, If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have been treated like this. Can you stay out of it? I didn't force you to follow me in. Yang Chen sneered and replied, I didn't force you to come in with a knife. You can only blame yourselves for being greedy. Since you were greedy, you have to bear the consequences. What does it have to do with me? Even if I didn't come in, this place would have been discovered in the future. People would have died because of greed. If it's mine, I will admit it. But if you came looking for death, I will never admit it. Hee. The man who spoke had held his breath and waited for Yang Chen to come in to say it. Now that he heard Yang Chen's words, the anger in his heart dissipated and his head drooped down. His voice became softer and softer, Don't think that you are the winner. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. At best, you are just mantises. After struggling to say that, his head finally drooped down and he no longer breathed. Ha 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 ha. Before Yang Chen and the others had time to shake their heads and sigh, they suddenly heard a burst of arrogant laughter. Fellow Taoist, you are right. They are just mantises. Fellow Taoist, please wait. I will send them to accompany you now. Along with the laughter, 16 human cultivators, who were almost wearing the same Taoist robes, appeared. As soon as they appeared, they each occupied 2 large circles of the 8 diagrams, surrounding Yang Chen's family and Neza in the middle. Judging from their cultivation, they were all at the innumerable tribulation true immortals. The one who laughed wildly was the oldest one among them. Master Yang, you are really good. The one who spoke before was already dead. This Taoist priest was just following along with his word. He didn't really want to fight for that guy's justice. After saying that, he turned to Yang Chen decisively and said with a smile, You played thousands of senior masters in the palm of your hand with a small trick and made them die one after another. I admire you. Let's cut the crap. If Master Yang is willing to tell me all the information you know, I can let your family go. Chapter 2550. Alas! Looking at the group of Taoist priests with proud expressions on their faces, Yang Chen really couldn't help but sigh, How come they are all this kind of goods? The seniors of the immortal world, are they only at this level? How dare you? Hearing Yang Chen's words, a Taoist next to him was furious and shouted at Yang Chen. It's not that Grandmaster Yang is presumptuous, it's that you really take yourself too seriously. Yang Chen hadn't opened his mouth yet, and there was a gloomy voice behind several Taoist priests. Accompanied by 2 sharp laughter, 2 figures slowly flashed out of the void and walked towards them. As they walked, the one who just spoke said, It seems that you haven't figured out who is the mantis and who is the oriole. Although there were only 2 people, one of them was dressed in bright red and the other in bright green, which was indescribably awkward. However, as soon as they appeared, the 16 Taoist priests acted as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Their figures suddenly changed. Before, they were surrounding Yang Chen's family and Neza, but now they were surrounding the two people who had just appeared in bright red and green. Looking at the performance of these Taoist priests, one could tell that these two fellows must be famous experts. However, how could a master of this level not know Neza? While feeling surprised, Yang Chen couldn't help but glance at Neza and almost burst into laughter. It seemed that, after a long time with Yang Chen, Neza was also affected by Yang Chen. At least that was how it looked now. Neza's appearance had not changed, but he was wearing an extremely ordinary robe. If one took a closer look, they could tell that it was made by Gaoyu. If one took a closer look, they could tell that it was a very good cultivator robe. However, no matter how much Gaoyu spent and how good her craftsmanship was, it couldn't be compared with the lotus-patterned soft armor that Neza wore before. The problem was that after Neza changed his attire, no ordinary cultivator would be able to recognize him as the famous god of slaughter in the immortal world, Neza, unless he was an acquaintance that he had met before. In particular, Neza's signature magic treasures, the fire-tipped spear, the armillary sash, the heaven and earth ring, and the firestorm wheels, were nowhere to be seen. Neza had put them all away. No matter how one looked at him now, he was just a wounded high-level cultivator. Neza did not hide his cultivation. He could tell that he was an innumerable tribulation true immortal. But what could a seriously injured innumerable tribulation true immortal do? Wasn't he a pushover that could be easily dealt with in the eyes of these experts? Even Neza, who had always killed people directly, had learned to play dirty. What else could Yang Chen say at this time? He could only shake his head and sigh at the degeneration of morals in the world. Just as Yang Chen was lamenting about Neza, the tense situation changed again. This change was all because of the appearance of another figure. The one who appeared was not a human cultivator. Rather, it was a shadow leopard Yao that appeared to be incomparably powerful. Only this kind of demon, who was good at hiding, could avoid the eyes and ears of almost all the cultivators and appear here out of thin air. You are still arguing here about who is the mantis and who is the oriole. It's so funny. The shadow leopard demon's body was huge. Just one of them was bigger than everyone present. He opened his mouth, and a contemptuous smile appeared on his face. What's there to fight about? You 10 little Taoist priests are mantises, while the 2 of you are orioles. Isn't that enough? But it seems that you haven't learned much. After saying that, the shadow leopard demon did not stop. His yellow eyes slightly widened, and he continued with a smile. I remember it is recorded in your human books that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. But behind the oriole, there is a hunter with a slingshot. I am the one with the slingshot. Do you have any objections? The demonic shadow leopard didn't even need to deliberately release his aura. The 18 experts from before were already intimidated by his size and gaze. They didn't dare to move recklessly. All they did was prepare for battle, waiting for the next moment to erupt. Everyone knew that this situation would not end peacefully. It was just a matter of when it would erupt. The 3 parties were in a stalemate, as if the next breath would start a war. Yang Chen looked at the figure of the dark shadow leopard and suddenly opened his mouth. The predecessor with the slingshot. When this younger generation junior came in, I also made a special detour. I don't know if the predecessor has seen it? Of course. The shadow leopard demon did not expect Yang Chen to speak at this time. Although he was far behind the crowd, the movement here could not escape his eyes and ears. Of course, he had seen Yang Chen's previous actions. Since the predecessor has seen it. Yang Chen's face was very puzzled. Looking at the position of the shadow leopard, he curiously asked, why did the predecessor deliberately stand in the place where the younger generation junior deliberately bypassed? Could it be that senior thinks that I'm deliberately mystifying things? Hearing Yang Chen's words, all the practitioners who were in a deadlock were stunned. They all focused their eyes on the position of the shadow leopard demon. Sure enough, as Yang Chen had said, the place where he stood was the place where Yang Chen deliberately made a detour. The shadow leopard demon looked down and suddenly realized that something was wrong. He had deliberately pursued the effect of concealment and forgot the danger. Something was wrong. However, it was too late for him to leave this place. A red light flashed. With a loud bang, the huge shadow leopard demon, an infinite tribulation true immortal, exploded. He did not even have the chance to resist, and his body was blown into pieces. The fine flesh and blood powder exploded on the bodies of the 18 practitioners around, but they did not seem to feel it. What kind of attack was that? The shadow leopard demon, whose cultivation was much higher than theirs, could not even resist it. How horrible was that? Clap, clap, clap. The sound of hands clapping came from a farther place. When they saw the person who was clapping, the 18 practitioners' faces became extremely gloomy again. An unusually well-dressed noble young master, followed by 4 beautiful and incomparable maids, was slowly walking in the direction that Yang Chun had just come from. Each of the 4 maids was holding a sword. The nobleman was empty-handed and was clapping his hands rhythmically, as if he was cheering for what had just happened. "Master Yang, good move!" The young master stopped not far away and gave a slight salute to Yang Chen's side. He looked very elegant. After praising Yang Chen, the young master's gaze turned to the 18 cultivators in front of him. With a smile that made people feel very comfortable, he slowly said, "I have carefully checked it, and there are no masters behind me. In addition, my people have set up a formation behind us. Even if there are experts, they will not disturb us." After speaking to those practitioners, the nobleman turned to Yang Chen and said, "Master Yang, I wonder if you can answer my question. Which immortal duke's tomb is this?" Chapter 25:51. Is there anyone else? Yang Chen didn't respond to the young master's request immediately. Instead, he shouted a few more times behind them, as if to confirm if there was anyone following them. "Don't worry, there won't be any more." The young master was very confident in his strength. Even though Yang Chen didn't respond to him immediately, his expression didn't change at all. He was still as calm as usual and gentle as ever. "The ones behind are all dead." Yang Chen was very appreciative of this patient and impatient noble young master. At least at this time, he showed a very good impression. Unfortunately, if he wasn't so greedy and followed them into the immortal monarch's tomb, Yang Chen might have befriended him when they met outside. On one hand, he admired his calm attitude, and on the other hand, he admired his hobby of bringing beauties with him. Unfortunately, the time and place weren't right, and the only good impression that Yang Chen had of him dissipated. "No more." Yang Chen looked around, then nodded at the remaining 23 cultivators and said, "Since there's no one else, then come in and take a look. I won't let you down." With that, Yang Chen led the 4 women and Neza into the tomb. The young master didn't even spare a glance at the 18 cultivators. He smiled and followed Yang Chen into the tomb with the 4 beauties. The remaining 2 groups of 18 cultivators pondered with each other. Everyone patiently waited for Yang Chen to kill all the cultivators who came in first. They forced themselves to endure until now, but they were immediately attacked by the dark shadow leopard. The last noble young master, with a smile on his face, was the most ruthless one. Especially his attitude towards the end. He didn't even put them in his eyes. Looking at the current situation, it seemed that it was time to reveal the last secret of the immortal tomb. Leave or stay? If they left, they might be able to escape with their lives if they ran all the way. They believed that neither Yang Chen nor the young master would attack them. If they stayed, they might be able to see the last secret of the immortal tomb, or maybe not. The 2 choices seemed easy. They could live if they left, but they might not be able to stay. However, these cultivators found it hard to make a decision. They had finally made it to the door and were about to see the final answer. Who would be able to let go of them just like that? It was fine if he left, but all the hardships he had suffered along the way with Yang Chen would be for nothing. Especially after arriving here, he was frightened by the shadow devil leopard and the noble young master before he could even do anything. For a cultivator, this was worse than death. The two experts in red and green looked at each other and saw the unwillingness in each other's eyes. Both of them seemed to have the same thought. In the next moment, the two of them directly walked towards the entrance of the tomb chamber and did not look back. This was a direct provocation to the 16 Taoist priests. After weighing the possibility of death and humiliation, the 16 Taoist priests finally decided to go in and take a look. It was not their style to enter a treasure mountain and return empty-handed. Although the 16 Taoist priests had delayed for a while, Yang Chun seemed to be very patient and had been waiting for them to make a decision. The noble young master did not urge them. Instead, he leisurely set up a tea table in a corner and enjoyed the refreshments served by beauties. "Humph! You're wasting time." As soon as the 16 Taoist priests came in, they heard the cold snort of the red and green experts next to them. It seemed that they were very dissatisfied with the delay. The tomb chamber was very large, at least tens of feet in radius. There was no pillar in the huge tomb chamber, it was empty. In the middle was a huge coffin, which was exquisitely carved and looked very perfect. It seemed that no one had disturbed the tomb chamber. Those cultivators who came in had been killed by the outer formation before they could enter the tomb chamber. Now there were only 4 groups of people in the huge tomb chamber. Yang Chun, Neza and 4 women, the noble young master and 4 beauties, 2 red and green experts, and 16 Taoist priests. Yang Chun was on the left, the noble young master was on the right, and the red and green experts and the 16 Taoist priests were in the middle, but they were separated by more than 10 feet. "Everyone is here?" Yang Chun looked at the people standing still, walked in front of the 4 women, and stood side by side with Neza. He faced the huge coffin and said, "Then I'll open it. Be careful if you want to see the answer." After reminding them, Yang Chun immediately began to use the magic art. The others had already been ready when Yang Chun spoke. The 16 Taoist priests even used their natal magic treasures without hesitation, holding them in their hands and guarding at all times. Yang Chun's magic art finally fell on the coffin. The faintly shining magic art was like a spark of fire, instantly igniting the protection on the coffin. Hong, the strongest defensive formation, exploded, completely enveloping everyone in the tomb chamber within its attack range. Neza's red armillary sash had already wrapped Yang Chun, the 4 women, and himself. Under Yang Chun's reminder, Neza even released the universe ring to encircle everyone. The protection was very comprehensive. With Neza's help, Yang Chun naturally didn't have to work too hard. If Yang Chun took action at this time, it would be an insult to Neza. The owner of the immortal tomb regarded any living creature that had entered the tomb chamber as his mortal enemy. Originally, there were so many formations around the sealed tomb. Except for cultivators with evil intentions, how could any living creature break in? Therefore, the protection on the coffin chamber was the strongest, and the attack method was also the most ruthless. There was no blind spot in the attack range. The first move was a killing move, and there was no room for retreat at all. Except for Yang Chun's family, who looked relaxed, and Neza, who was calm, everyone else was very serious about protecting the coffin. At this moment, they didn't have time to think about anything else. They just had to endure this attack. This is the last defense, and we need to sacrifice enough lives. Yang Chun looked at the Taoist priests, red and green masters, the young master, and the 4 beauties who were protecting themselves not far away, and said to Neza as if he was chatting, "I was worried that those guys who rushed in before didn't rush into the tomb chamber, which was quite a failure. I didn't expect that someone would help us. How lucky!" After talking to Neza, Yang Chun turned to the side with a smile again, and said to the masters who were working hard to protect themselves, "Everyone, there's no need to argue about whether the mantis is the oriole or the oriole, and there's no need to argue about who has the slingshot. The most important thing is to survive." At this moment, the 16 Taoist priests, who were relatively the weakest among the cultivators, were already having a hard time. If it weren't for the addition of the 2-8 diagrams, they wouldn't have been able to withstand such a powerful attack. Even if they could barely withstand it, among the 16 Taoist priests, 6 of them with weaker cultivation had already begun to bleed. Chapter 25:52. Everyone present heard Yang Chen's words. Yang Chen didn't hide anything. He didn't even hide the fact that opening the last defense required the lives of masters, which made these masters very unhappy. However, Yang Chen didn't make them feel that it was unfair because Yang Chen and his family were also within the attack range. If the seemingly immature young man beside Yang Chen couldn't block it, Yang Chen's family would be the ones who opened the defense. Everything depended on one's cultivation. There was no conspiracy. Everyone stood together and fought. The enemy was just the protection of the coffin. The attack of the formation seemed to be endless, and the power of the attack was also increasing. Yang Chen knew very well that this was because there was a powerful spiritual vein supporting this attack continuously. Actually, all the masters present knew this, but they just didn't have time to care about it. "Kid, I've put in so much effort this time. I want 20% more of what we get later." Seeing that Yang Chen's family was resting under his protection, Neza directly changed the terms of the division to be more favorable to him. "Didn't you say that you wouldn't be tempted by external things?" Yang Chen looked at Neza in surprise. "You're interested in this little property of the younger generation?" "I'm not tempted by these temptations. It's enough for me to attack you or others." Neza's tone was very reasonable, which was very different from the image of a master he showed before, "but this doesn't mean that I'll give up what I should get. Understand? I've put in more effort, so I should get the bigger share. Do you have any objections?" No. Yang Chen shook his head hurriedly. What a joke. Even if he had any objections, he wouldn't dare to voice it. Moreover, Neza was right. Of course, he should get the bigger share. There was an essential difference between what should be his and what should be his. In just a short while, 10 of the 16 Taoists began to vomit blood. Under such strong pressure, even with the support of the 2-8 trigrams formation, the fact that the 16 Taoists had the lowest cultivation couldn't be concealed. In contrast, the red and green masters and the noble young master were quite calm. However, even though they looked calm, the red and green experts and the noble young master were not as calm as they thought. After feeling the powerful attack of the formation, they understood why none of the 1,000 or so people who had entered had survived. They also understood why the Shadow Devil Leopard had died so easily. On the surface, it looked like they could still hold on, but in their hearts, they were constantly hoping that the 16 Taoist priests would not be able to hold on. Thinking about it, the 16 lives in the array formation should be enough, right? The owner of the Immortal tomb was ruthless. He knew that once his tomb was discovered, he wouldn't be able to stop those greedy people from digging it up. It was certainly impossible to kill all of them. Hence, the setup of the formation was very interesting. It was to use the lives of experts to fill in the gap. As long as enough experts of Tribulation Real Immortal died, the formation would naturally be undone. His own tomb attracted more than 1,000 Tribulation True Immortal gravediggers. This business was definitely worth it. The gravediggers would not mind sacrificing the lives of others to open the door for them. At the final juncture, as long as there were enough lives, it would be fine. Since Yang Chen had taken the initiative to come in first, it meant that he only needed a few lives, because he was not sure that the 16 Taoist priests and the red and green masters would come in. According to this inference, 5 or 6 lives would be enough. In addition to Yang Chen's side, the red and green masters and the noble young master all had the same thought. 16 lives should be enough, right? But they didn't know that Yang Chen had originally planned to let Neza break the formation by force. With their help, Neza would be saved a lot of cultivation. Bang bang bang. A series of sounds were heard. Among the 16 Taoist priests, The 8 Taoist priests with the lowest cultivation in the outer circle of the 8 diagrams formation could no longer bear the powerful attack of the formation and died almost at the same time. Blood and minced flesh almost covered the entire tomb. 8 lives should be enough, right? Even the remaining 8 Taoist priests thought so, but the power of the formation did not weaken at all. It was still as powerful as before. Facing such a situation, the group of people could only suppress their shock and continue to resist the endless powerful attacks. On the other hand, on Yang Chen's side, they were so angry that Yang Chen was drinking tea while being served by 4 wives and concubines. What made them even more speechless was that Neza, who should have tried his best to resist the attack of the formation, was also shaking his head and commenting on Yang Chen's poor tea skills. How could he let others live? My tea skills are poor? Facing Neza's unceremonious belittling, Yang Chen forcibly resisted the urge to argue with Neza. It was impossible to reason with this guy, so he could only wave his hand helplessly and said, "Okay, okay. Even if my tea skills are poor, I will let you know what real tea skills are when Shanshan comes next time. Although I'm not good at it, I have a lot of talented wives. You will be envious of me." The last sentence was completely aimed at Neza, who did not have a wife, but it made Neza speechless. Could he immediately make 8 or 10 wives and concubines and show them off? Just as they were talking, the remaining 8 Taoist priests also exhausted their last bit of strength and exploded under the pressure of the formation. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of explosions continued. The formation was still attacking the lives of 16 tribulation true immortals. At this time, the eyes of the red and green masters began to flash with the light of despair. They thought they could be free, but now they regretted coming in just now. Bang bang. The red and green masters exploded one after another. Then it was the noble young master and the 4 beauties who were nervous. The 5 of them formed a 5 elements formation, but they still could not wait for the formation to stop until now. At this time, the noble young master really realized that it was not good. At this time, he finally understood why Yang Chen said that the most important thing was to survive, whether it was the mantis or the oriole or the one with the slingshot. But no matter how much he regretted it, no matter how much he hated it, the mountain-like formation pressed down. The noble young master was fine, but the 4 beauties who served him did not have such a strong cultivation. In front of the noble young master, their bodies exploded one after another. What made the noble young master even more depressed was that when his last confidant died, the tomb seemed to have taken enough lives, and all the attacks stopped instantly. "I will kill you!" The noble young master felt the pressure was relieved, and then he immediately jumped up. He gritted his teeth and rushed to Neza, who had just put away the red armillary sash and touched the universe ring. If it were not for Yang Chen and the others, how could his woman die? In fact, I still have to thank you. Otherwise, it would take me a lot of effort. Neza did not look at the figure of the noble young master who was rushing to him. He moved his fingers, and the universe ring flew to him. Thank you. Chapter 2553. Even Yang Chen did not need to verify the result of Neza's throwing out the heaven and earth ring. It must be the result they hoped for. There was no other possibility. How high could the cultivation of these guys, who even wanted to rob the tomb of a dead immortal master, be? Although they were all tribulation true immortals, there was a huge difference between them. A simple example could be used to illustrate the difference. If Yang Chen kept cultivating, he would definitely be able to enter the ranks of tribulation true immortals in a few thousand years. However, Neza had at least hundreds of thousands of years of experience to reach this level. The difference of hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation was like the difference between 2 tribulation true immortals. When Neza took back the heaven and earth ring, Gong Sunling had already taken the initiative to clean up the scene. The broken corpses of the tribulation true immortals were very useful supplements for the geographical map of mountains and rivers. Every piece was refined. Soon, the whole tomb became clean again. There was no blood or flesh left. As soon as Gong Sunling cleaned up the tomb, the huge coffin opened by itself. Neza was stunned. Then he understood. He looked at the slowly opening coffin and said nothing. Since the gravedigger had broken the formation, the owner of the tomb knew that his tomb could not be kept, so he took the initiative to open the coffin. When the coffin was opened, a raging fire came out of it. However, the fire did not cause any harm to the people present. It was purely the owner of the tomb who was burning his body. Since the gravedigger could not keep the tomb, he might as well destroy his body so that others would not humiliate him. Especially under the premise that the gravedigger had sacrificed thousands of lives, destroying the corpse and burning the bones to ashes was simply a normal way to vent his anger. Neither Yang Chen nor Neza stopped the process. They let the owner of the tomb burn his body until nothing was left. Yang Chen even deliberately lit a stick of incense while the owner of the tomb was burning. After all, he wanted to occupy the tomb, so it was reasonable for him to light a stick of incense. When the flames were completely extinguished, Yang Chen and Neza walked forward and looked into the open coffin. Just like the funerals of emperors, all the funerary objects were kept inside the coffin. The magic treasures of immortals could not be easily destroyed by the arrangement of a dead person. Moreover, the owners of the magic treasures did not want to destroy the magic treasures that they had painstakingly refined, so they kept them. You first. Since he had promised Neza that he would get 20% more, Yang Chen didn't care who would choose first. After all, the whole graveyard was his. Therefore, he generously let Neza choose first. Neza did not stand on ceremony. He stepped forward and began to inspect the magic treasures that were buried with him. Trash, trash, trash. Neza turned them over one by one, and the word he repeated the most was, trash. Every magic weapon that was defined as garbage by Neza would be thrown outside by Neza like garbage, which was Yang Chen's share. Gao Yu put away the so-called rubbish first. Firstly, she needed to appraise it first to train Gao Yu's firmness. Secondly, she could learn some advanced refining techniques from it. After all, no matter how rubbish they were magic weapons refined by experts at the level of Immortal Monarch and 10,000 Tribulation True Immortals, so she could learn from them. Finally, after searching for a while, Neza found a magic treasure that caught his attention. At the same time, it was placed in the innermost part of the pile of magic treasures. Basically, it could be guessed that it belonged to the Immortal Duke. It was of high quality and had exquisite craftsmanship. Neza also nodded his head. But that was all. It was already a very great achievement for Neza to nod his head and approve of it. As for making Neza worship it further, the dead Immortal Duke really did not have that ability. After keeping the magic treasure, Neza put away all the elixirs and other items. Whether these elixirs were useful for his injury or not, as long as they were taken out, they were tempting to Yang Chen, the alchemist. These elixirs could be used to repay some favors. They were very useful. Neza said that he wanted 20% more, but there were not many that he liked. He would rather not have some things than waste his effort to put them away. Therefore, most of the benefits in the Tomb of the Immortals still belonged to Yang Chen. By the way, if you plan to use this as the main gate of the Chunyang Palace, I'm afraid it's not suitable. Neza put away the bonus that he got this time with satisfaction. Then he began to consider the problem from Yang Chen's point of view. It's just a few middle-level spiritual veins. It's a little hard to be the secret cave residence of the sect. It's not good enough to be the main gate at all. I just found it. Yang Chen couldn't help complaining. When he visited this place in his previous life, he remembered that it was quite good, but now it seemed that it was indeed a little bad. Just as Neza said, it was barely enough to be the main gate cave residence. Some of the cave residences of the attackers on the way before looked good, but they were all damaged in the collision with the Mountain River geographical map. Moreover, How good could the spatial magic treasure of those guys who wanted a golden immortal's natal magic treasure be? So until now, this tomb of the immortal could barely be used as a main gate cave residence. Actually, the Mountain River geographical map is not bad. Why not use it as the main gate? Neza was more curious. It was obvious that Yang Chen's wife had enough powerful and could be said to be the best cave residence magic treasure he had ever seen. Why did they still look for it everywhere? Neza had personally entered the Mountain River geographical map to feel it. Naturally, he could see that it was extraordinary, especially knowing that it was a complete fusion of the demon realm and the demon realm. If they could find a realm in the immortal realm to fuse, it would be another 3 realms. The Mountain River geographical map is Ling's natal magic treasure, not the property of the sect. Yang Chen shook his head and argued. In fact, this was not the only reason. It was more because he couldn't be honest with Neza. Gong Sunling had already begun to collect the entire tomb of the immortal from the tomb chamber. Just as Neza said, it was barely enough to be a cave residence in the sect, so they might as well not do it. Let Gong Sunling refine and collect the immortal realm of the Mountain River geographical map. If this doesn't work, then what do you plan to do? Neza was very curious about what Yang Chen would do in this situation, so after asking, he looked at Yang Chen expectantly, waiting for his answer. Please! Yang Chen looked at Neza's gaze, as if he was watching a good show. How could he not know what he was thinking? He glanced at Neza, pointed to his head and said, I know at least 6 good places here. I don't believe that I can't find a suitable cave residence in the sect. Just a cave residence in the sect? Neza understood what Yang Chen meant, not the main gate. No need. Yang Chen shook his head and smiled. I suddenly thought of a more suitable place, but it will take some time. Chapter 2554. Yang Chen kept Neza in suspense, but Neza's curiosity was piqued. He wanted to wait for Yang Chen to continue his introduction, but this despicable brat didn't say anything, which made Neza uncomfortable. Why don't you tell me about a more suitable place? Neza couldn't help but kiss him. Why do you need to wait for a while? Because my cultivation is too low now. Yang Chen told him his reason honestly, but it made Neza unhappy. Neza had a high standard. A cave abode that he didn't like was a good one for an ordinary sect, or even a first-rate sect or a sect. However, Yang Chen seemed to have a higher standard than him. He directly asked Gong Sunling to refine this immortal's tomb. This made Neza curious. What was the scale of the mountain gate that Yang Chen wanted? It's normal that your cultivation is low, but I'm idle here. Even though Neza went through all the places he knew in the immortal world in his mind, he couldn't figure out which enclave Yang Chen would choose for his mountain gate. Neza's interest was piqued, so he didn't have any scruples anymore. Yang Chen's cultivation was low, but was Neza's cultivation also low? Although he was still injured, Neza already had the ability to protect himself, and his mind started to become active. What Neza didn't expect was that after hearing Neza's words, Yang Chen turned around and looked at Neza from head to toe. He actually started to shake his head repeatedly. Neza was instantly furious. What does this mean? Is he looking down on me? You're still injured. If you force yourself to fight, you'll lose more than you gain. Yang Chen's answer was very tactful, but he didn't dare to excessively provoke Neza. When your injury is at least 90% recovered, then it'll be possible to fight. Possible? Of course, Neza wouldn't miss a single word that Yang Chen said. He immediately began to question the word maybe. 90% of the injury recovery is only a possibility? Yang Chen knew that he couldn't fool Neza, so he said with a wry smile, Senior, you're alone, aren't you? Neza's interest was raised to the highest level. Yang Chen was giving him face. Recovering 90% of his injuries was just to give him a way out. If he couldn't recover, it was because he was injured. However, Neza knew very well the difference between recovering 90% of his injuries and fully recovered combat power. However, this made Neza even happier. After he recovered, he wouldn't be able to deal with a big scene alone. Just thinking about it made him excited. And Neza thought for a while and said, I might be able to find a helper. That guy is quite ruthless and he has a lot of friends. He's much stronger than me. Why don't we look for him while we recuperate? We can also collect a few cave abodes from you. It seems like the process of you looking for cave abodes is quite fun. Yang Chen was speechless. Only Neza, who had been suffering for thousands of years, would have such an idea. Putting everything else aside, just this immortal tomb alone had cost the lives of almost 2,000 experts to obtain. However, Yang Chen couldn't complain to Neza. He could only bear it silently. Senior, is this helper very powerful? Neza's helper piqued Yang Chen's curiosity. Yang Chen thought that there could only be one person who could make Neza say that he was ruthless. The problem was that Yang Chen didn't want to face that guy now. Yang Jian, you know him, right? Neza said the name of the helper directly. I believe you haven't seen him in the Immortal beheading platform. He has a lot of friends, especially a group of demon friends. All of them are fierce. If you can find him and satisfy him, it'll probably be much easier for you to do a lot of things. As expected, it's him. Yang Chen sighed in his heart. He probably couldn't avoid it anymore. Yang Chen already knew that Neza and Yang Jian had a good relationship. He also guessed that it was Yang Jian. However, although Yang Chen didn't see Yang Jian in the Immortal beheading platform, he saw the celestial hound and chopped off its head with his own hand. The relationship between Yang Jian and the celestial hound wasn't that of an ordinary master and pet. Yang Jian treated the celestial hound as a combat partner. Legally speaking, Yang Chen was just an executioner of the Immortal beheading platform and had nothing to do with the culprit. However, Yang Jian might not be so lenient. Otherwise, how could he be worthy of the word ruthless that Neza mentioned? What's wrong? Why do you have such an expression? Neza asked when he saw Yang Chen's suddenly bitter face. I chopped off the celestial hound's head with my own hands. Yang Chen revealed the reason with a bitter smile. Do you think Yang Jian will like me? That's a problem. Neza clearly knew Yang Jian's personality. If that was the reason, the first thing Yang Jian would do after finding out about Yang Chen's identity was to kill Yang Chen to avenge the celestial hound. Neza touched his chin and didn't know how to solve this problem. If Yang Jian can't do it, I can only think of other support. Even Neza couldn't guarantee that he could solve this conflict. His opponent was Yang Jian, not some random god. Therefore, Neza could only think of another way. Don't you have a friendship with White Peony in the spiritual realm? If she could find Lu Chunyang, their family would also be a good helper. If he shows up, the two of us should be able to help you ease the conflict between you and Yang Jian. Even an unruly guy like Neza was quite afraid of Ancestor Lu. No matter how fierce Yang Jian was, facing the pressure from both Neza and Ancestor Lu, he would definitely let go of some unnecessary persistence. Of course, it's best if your cultivation can improve by leaps and bounds. Neza touched his bald chin and guessed, I guess if you can quickly reach the level of an innumerable tribulation true immortal, then with your powerful body refining technique and the increase in strength from refining the immortal execution stage, you should be able to make Yang Jian look at you in a different light. At that time, everything will be much simpler. In the end, strength was everything in this world. If Yang Jian could easily kill Yang Chen, he would definitely attack Yang Chen. But if he was on par with Yang Chen, he would definitely not treat Yang Chen the same way. It was actually very simple to gain a foothold in the immortal realm. He just needed to improve his cultivation and everything could be solved. I know. Yang Chen nodded and said, That's why I said that we need to wait for my cultivation to improve and for your injury to recover. During this period of time, It's better to take those cave mansions one by one, lest a long night brings many dreams, and let others take them first. Chapter 2555. Almost half of the cultivators in the immortal realm would choose Yang Chen as the most famous cultivator in the past 100 years. It was because of the things that Yang Chen had done in the past 100 years that everyone couldn't choose anyone else at all, they could only choose Yang Chen. Not to mention others, just counting the number of cultivators who had died because of Yang Chen, there were almost 100,000 of them in the past 100 years. Every cultivator died while tracking Yang Chen's whereabouts and trying to seize some secret magic treasures from him. A few of them wanted to capture Yang Chen by strong means, and the result was that they were killed. Yang Chen had made more than 20 trips in the past 100 years. Every time, he would attract a large number of cultivators who were curious and even greedy. Therefore, Yang Chen's killing with a borrowed knife would play out every time. In order to get the treasures, they had to take risks. However, the result of the risks was that Yang Chen's family was safe and sound. No matter who rushed in first or later, they basically had no chance to come out. Although many experts had killed countless people, compared with the achievements of Yang Chen's family in the past 100 years, they were dwarf. Even if it was the Jade Emperor, in the past 100 years, Yang Chen's limelight was not as big. The most famous cultivator deserved his reputation. Many cultivators felt strange. Almost all of Yang Chen's family members were golden immortals, and they had just ascended to the immortal realm a few years ago. However, none of the 100,000 cultivators could hurt them. It was said that there were experienced infinite tribulation true immortals among the strongest cultivators, but they still disappeared silently or died in front of people's eyes. It was surprising. Because of this reason, it was not known from the beginning of Yang Chen's trip. No cultivator dared to easily follow Yang Chen's family, who would take their own lives as a joke when they knew that they would die if they followed them. No one could figure out how Yang Chen and his family could dominate the entire immortal world with just the cultivation base of golden immortals. But one thing was certain, it was best not to find trouble with them. Otherwise, the consequences would be told by the lives of more than 90,000 people. Those who wanted to target Yang Chen's family were, of course, dealt with by Neza. After coming out of the Immortal Lord's tomb, God Neza basically stayed in the Mountain River geographical map and didn't come out unless someone provoked him. Then, he would be killed by God Neza without saying anything. Neza's recovery speed was getting faster and faster. As Neza's injuries recovered more and more, and the pills Yang Chen could concoct became more and more advanced, Neza's injuries were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this rate, Neza would probably recover to his prime in less than 200 years. If Neza was given another 100 years or so, he would be able to comprehend more from this recovery, and his cultivation base would definitely be able to break through and improve. After collecting more than 20 secret cave dwellings, Yang Chen had enough cave dwellings in his hands to be used as the sex cave dwellings. He had also plundered countless treasures, magic treasures, and pills from these caves as if they were free. Even Neza, who had always been unperturbed by material objects, had made a lot of money from the continuous plundering. He had even found a material that could improve the fire-tipped spear again, which made Neza so happy that he danced with joy. What was strange was that all the super sect in the immortal world basically restrained their disciples from getting involved in Yang Chen's affairs. Especially the 4 sects of the Tao sects and Yin-Yang Demon School, they all had a deep relationship with Yang Chen. There were female disciples who were Yang Chen's wives and concubines, so they didn't need to have any bad ideas at all. As long as they treated Yang Chen's wives and concubines well, there would naturally be good things in the future. No, the Green Jade Immortal Island immediately felt the kindness of Yang Chen. After a long time of plundering the wealth, Yang Chen was also a little tired. It just happened that more than 100 years had passed, and the girls had received enough guidance in their respective sect. Yang Chen also took the opportunity to visit his wives and concubines one by one. It just so happened that the location was the closest to the Green Jade Immortal Island, so Yang Chen was the first to visit. The Green Jade Immortal Island attached great importance to Yang Chen. Although Yang Chen was a junior, the Green Jade Immortal Island was the previous island master who had just ascended from the spiritual world. He was also an acquaintance. The standard of reception was very high, and the etiquette was quite comprehensive. Yang Chen also felt a little flattered. As a courtesy of visiting the door, Yang Chen took out the barrier-dispelling pill that he invented in the spiritual world. There were not many pills, but it was enough for almost 10 true immortals to use. After hearing Yang Chen explain the efficacy and function of the barrier-dispelling pill, the former island master of the Green Jade Immortal Island was simply overjoyed. Yang Chen's great reputation in the mortal world and the spiritual world, and his good reputation in alchemy was not for show. The former island master who was responsible for the reception was simply jumping all the way to meet the island master. When Shi Shanshan and Yang Chen met, they were naturally happy. This time, Yang Chen came to take away Shi Shanshan and reunite with his wife. This was also the norm in the immortal world. The family lived together more than in the sect. Of course, Yang Chen also really intended to let Neza know how good his wife was at art. Here the couple reunited happily. On the other side, the high-level officials of the Green Jade Immortal Island had already gathered together to study the barrier-dispelling pill refined by Yang Chen. Did he really say that? The high-level officials of the immortal world had never been in contact with Yang Chen at all. Even 200 years ago, no one knew who Yang Chen was. It was only in recent years that they constantly heard the name of Yang Chen. Holding the barrier-dispelling pill, they couldn't believe it. How could the cultivators at their level not know the stubborn disease of a true immortal? How many disciples of the sect were trapped in that realm because they couldn't break through? Even they themselves had passed that embarrassing bottleneck in danger, but they didn't know how to help the disciples resolve it. Just this problem alone, it was not known how many masters had studied for many years. Now Yang Chen actually said that he had a solution. How could they not be skeptical? These people who were skeptical had never been in contact with Yang Chen and had only heard of Yang Chen's reputation. On the contrary, the former island master who had just ascended from the spiritual world firmly believed it. Yang Chen had created miracles before not once or twice, and he even had a great reputation not long ago. It might be possible to say that Yang Chen's reputation for killing people was false, but Yang Chen would never smash his own reputation for alchemy. The method of verification was actually very simple. There were so many disciples of the Green Jade Immortal Island, some of them were trapped in this stage. They randomly found 3 or 4 of them and let them take the pill. After a few days, they would know whether it was true or false. In just half a month, the high-level officials of the Green Jade Immortal Island were shocked to see the earth-shaking changes of these disciples, who were testing the medicine in front of them. Chapter 2556. When they first took the barrier-dispelling pill, the disciples all showed signs of dispiritedness. This was what Yang Chen had told them before. There would definitely be some signs of weakness, so it was not worth making a fuss about. What surprised them was what method Yang Chen used to make a 10,000 tribulation true immortal look like this with just 1 or 2 elixirs. Presumably, the medicinal materials used were not simple. Just this alone was enough to boost everyone's confidence. However, it seemed difficult to make the person who took the pill weak, but in fact, it was very easy. After all, the person who took the pill swallowed it himself, and then gave up resistance to let the pill take effect. In this case, not to mention the true immortal who was trapped in the bottleneck, even the experts with high cultivation would have to kneel. Everyone was surprised that Yang Chen was just a golden immortal cultivator, and the pill he refined was not more than 8 revolutions. How could he make a true immortal show such a strong effect? If the effect of the barrier-dispelling pill was only like this, it naturally could not attract the attention of the high-level officials of the Green Jade Immortal Island. But the next change of the disciples who took the pill surprised everyone. After being weak for about 10 days, these disciples began to recover to normal one by one. What was gratifying was that after about 10 days of weakness, everyone's spirit seemed to be much better than before. Perhaps it was because of the previous weak expression, everyone was in high spirits. When they cultivated again, even they themselves began to realize that it was different. The omnipresent fog that had been bothering them and stopping them from advancing seemed to have disappeared all of a sudden. The feeling of cultivation being so smooth and thriving was simply intoxicating. Several experts were completely lost in it. After this joyous cultivation session was over, they woke up from their pleasant trance and were pleasantly surprised to find that their cultivation had begun to change. This was incredible! No matter how they cultivated before, their cultivation seemed to be fixed, and they could no longer move forward. This situation had lasted for decades, or even hundreds of years, and everyone had long been numb to it. Today, they suddenly found that their previously stagnant cultivation had loosened, and it actually improved by such a small amount. How could they not be happy? Cultivators who had not experienced this kind of bottleneck could not understand how this kind of insignificant small improvement made them excited. Not just one, but all of the disciples who had consumed the medicine had this kind of improvement. Although it was only a small increase, it was still an increase. This also meant that in the future, as long as he cultivated for a long enough time, his cultivation would continue to increase. He would no longer be stuck at a bottleneck. For these cultivators who were stuck in a bottleneck, this was the best news. Many cultivators trapped in this state could only think of ways to break out. Those who could not break out could only wait for death. It was not a pleasant feeling. But now everything was different. With just 1 or 2 small pills, the bottleneck would disappear without a trace, and his cultivation would continue to rise. This was not just an increase in cultivation, but also a series of improvements in his confidence, mental state, lifespan, and so on. To put it more seriously, it was understandable to treat this as a life-saving grace. Among the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island, except for the former island master who had dealt with Yang Chen in the spiritual world, everyone else was stunned. Looking at these disciples who suddenly regained their confidence, they couldn't believe their eyes. After these disciples said their feelings after taking the medicine and their later discoveries one by one, the eyes of the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island were all red. It was a feeling of discovering a peerless treasure in front of them, and they wanted to take it immediately. Can he break through the bottleneck like this? A core elder still couldn't believe his eyes, holding the jade bottle with the barrier-dispelling pill and muttering doubtfully. To be honest, the appearance of this barrier-dispelling pill was really not good. It was too ordinary, and it didn't smell at all. It made people feel that it was not a high-end product at first glance. But it was such a small pill that could let the disciples who were trapped in the bottleneck of the true immortal safely break through the bottleneck. Everyone couldn't even tell why this feeling was crazy. What do you think? How about we accept Yang Chen as a disciple of the Green Jade Immortal Island? Immediately, a core elder put forward such a suggestion. After the other high-level members heard it, all their eyes lit up. This suggestion was good. Anyway, Yang Chen and the Green Jade Immortal Island had a deep relationship. He was the son-in-law of the Green Jade Immortal Island, so it was not too much for him to join the Green Jade Immortal Island. It's not right. The former island master immediately objected. Although Yang Chen is now alone and he doesn't even have a place to stay, he alone represents the entire Chunyang Palace. If we let other sect know that we forcibly accepted Yang Chen as a disciple, it means that Chunyang Palace will be annexed. Other sect will never let it go. This was a big problem. Yang Chen could be said to be a person who could control the Chunyang Palace. The major sect could allow the profound heaven sect to be destroyed, and they could allow the rise of Chunyang Palace, but they would never allow any super sect to annex Chunyang Palace. That meant that the super rise of that sect would become a monster more terrifying than the profound heaven sect. It would be strange if they didn't attack it. Then what else can we do to get this pill recipe? Immediately, a core high-level member asked. Everyone had seen the effect of the barrier-dispelling pill. Why were so many people's eyes shining? Wasn't it because they wanted to take the pill recipe for themselves? Even Yang Chen, the 8th grade alchemist master, had refined such a level of medicinal pills. What would happen if it was refined by the 9th grade alchemist master in the sect? How about, while Yang Chen is in my sect, take him down? A radical high-level member next to him made a decision in an instant. As long as he is in our hands, are we afraid that we won't be able to get the pill recipe from him? There are many people who want to know his secret, but haven't they all died or disappeared? The current island master directly shook her head and rejected this suggestion. This was also thanks to Yang Chen's previous performance. 100,000 cultivators had disappeared into thin air, and their cultivations were not low. It was indeed frightening. The island master was about to speak when she suddenly saw the constipated expression on the face of the former island master, who was responsible for receiving Yang Chen. It seemed that she had something to say, but it was not appropriate for her to interrupt on this occasion. Her heart moved, and she asked her to speak. Actually, if you want Grandmaster Yang's pill recipe, there is no need to go through so much trouble. After all, the former island master had been in contact with Yang Chen. He was very clear about Yang Chen's habit. With the opportunity to speak, he immediately said, "If you want the pill recipe, you can buy it directly from Grandmaster Yang. We have done a lot of business, and for the sake of Shanshan, Grandmaster Yang will give us a discount." Chapter 2557. Buy? Discount? Hearing the words of the former island master who attended the high-level meeting with the lowest seniority, the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island did not turn this corner for a while. These two words were already too far away from the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island, so far away that when they were in the spiritual world, they had almost never done such a thing. When did the things that the Green Jade Immortal Island wanted could be bought with some property? Was there such a thing as a discount? The things that the Green Jade Immortal Island wanted were not obtained by the disciples who risked their lives to get them. Which time was it not that the masters had to go through life and death to kill those competitors or go through difficult negotiations to get their hands on it? Suddenly, at this time, someone told them that they didn't have to fight, as long as they paid the money. It really gave people a very mysterious feeling. It was too unreal. Could they get it without bloodshed? In fact, our sect has done business with Master Yang many times in the mortal world and the spiritual world. The former island master saw that everyone still didn't understand, and immediately explained the origin of Yang Chen and the Green Jade Immortal Island. Until the former island master finished speaking, the high-level members were silent. No one thought that in their eyes the extremely difficult and troublesome things to deal with actually needed to be so simple. No need to fight? The high-level members still had an unbelievable expression and asked in a daze. No. The former island master replied very affirmatively, as long as the price is negotiated. But what? The island master of the Green Jade Immortal Island immediately asked, was there any change? Even if it's a discount, the price of this Master Yang is not a normal black. The former island master and Yang Chen have dealt with each other countless times in this regard and had a deep understanding. Sometimes buying his things is really distressing. How many times did they buy Yang Chen's things? Was it expensive? It was really too expensive. Even if it was a discount for the Green Jade Immortal Island, it could also make them distressed. But was it worth it? Absolutely worth it. Nothing bought from Yang Chen's hands was fake. It was definitely a good thing that made people satisfied. But every time his price is within the price range that your heart can bear, you will never lose money if you buy it. The former island lord continued, moreover, many times, we're able to exchange for these with mere treasures or treasures. In fact, we're still taking advantage of them. Our sect was fine, but the mysterious heaven sect was tricked by him. In the end, they still gritted their teeth and bought his things. This was an interesting piece of news. No matter how powerful an expert was, they would still be gossipy, especially when it involved the mysterious heaven sect, which they feared the most. They couldn't help but ask the former island master to tell them about this in detail. The former island master was also happy to satisfy the careful thoughts of these elders. His tongue was like a lotus flower, and he vividly told some of the secrets he knew about the battle between Yang Chen and the profound heaven sect. Especially when Yang Chen and several of their sects teamed up to trap the profound heaven sect, it simply made people feel cool from the beginning to the end, from the inside to the outside. What an interesting kid! After listening to the story of the former island master, the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island collectively gave Yang Chen an interesting evaluation. However, behind this evaluation, it was also a silent praise for Yang Chen. No matter who it was, he relied on various means to run his own small sect into a behemoth that could compete with them. This person was worthy of their admiration. In that case, then you can contact Yang Chen and see what price the pill recipe of this barrier elimination pill needs to be sold to us. Since the former island master had been in contact with Yang Chen, she didn't bother two masters for the same thing. She was the one who received them, and now she was the one who was bargaining with Yang Chen, so he let her negotiate with Yang Chen. Soon, the former island master brought back the price of Yang Chen. Compared with the huge value of the barrier elimination pill, the price offered by Yang Chen was almost insignificant. But it was such a trivial request that made the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island collectively embarrassed. You want a piece of land? The island master of the Green Jade Immortal Island pondered, which piece of land do you want? Yang Chen's reputation in choosing the site has long been spread from the mortal spiritual world to the immortal world. As long as the site chosen by Yang Chen was a treasure land with great development potential. At this time, Yang Chen wanted a piece of land, which really made the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island embarrassed. Any piece. The former island master smiled bitterly. It was this that made people uncomfortable, but the requirement for the site cannot be smaller than 10,000 miles. In addition, he said that this is the site that is intended to be used to build the Chunyang Palace, so there must be at least no less than 10 high-level spiritual veins. The size of the site was not a problem. 10 high-level spiritual veins were not a big deal for a sect like the Green Jade Immortal Island. The key was where the choice of the site was difficult. If Yang Chen was given a piece of land, and as a result, Yang Chen developed on this site, wouldn't it make the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island collectively embarrassed? How blind would the higher-ups have to be to hand over such a precious piece of land to others? But if they didn't give it, they were afraid that it would be difficult to ask for the pill recipe of the barrier-dispelling pill. Compared with an ordinary site with a radius of 10,000 miles, the pill recipe of the barrier-dispelling pill was 10,000 times more precious. The high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island were now in a dilemma. Now thinking about the evaluation of Yang Chen by the former island master not long ago, it was really like this. This price was really not a normal black. Just the fact that the high-level members were collectively embarrassed was already not a normal black. He said that this is used to build the mountain gate? One of the high-level members suddenly found one of the key points and quickly asked, a radius of 10,000 miles, is it enough for the Chunyang Palace to build the mountain gate? This was definitely a problem. If it was an ordinary sect, a radius of 10,000 miles was enough to put down several of them, but it was obviously not possible for the Chunyang Palace. A super sect that was comparable to the Green Jade Immortal Island in the future, with a radius of 10,000 miles. It was estimated that even the disciples could not be settled. It must be known that an official disciple could not be settled in a mere 100 miles. If this disciple didn't guess wrong, I am afraid that he will have the same requirements for other super sect in the future. After all, the former island master knew Yang Chen's style of doing things. The pill recipe of the barrier-dispelling pill was definitely not only sold to them. Each sect had to have a radius of 10,000 miles, and then they had to find a way to get it together. It could barely be regarded as a good mountain gate. In this way, everyone could guess the possible location. Even several sect members united to discuss and place the Chunyang Palace in a place that was not only loose, but they would not feel threatened, and they would not lose face in the future. As for how to connect the major sect within a radius of 10,000 miles, it was too simple. As long as the cultivators in those territories were driven away, it didn't matter if there was a sect or not. For these super sect members, cleaning up a place with a radius of 10,000 miles, was that a thing? Chapter 2558. After understanding this, the senior management of the Green Jade Immortal Island knew how to operate it. Yang Chen's conditions, no matter what, should be agreed to first. At the same time, representatives were quickly sent to the major sect to inform them in advance, so that they could be psychologically prepared. As for the choice of targets, the Green Jade Immortal Island scanned the map and chose 3 suitable locations. The 3 places were places where some small sect gathered. There was no lack of spiritual veins, but they would never be so outstanding. The 3 places were hundreds of thousands of miles in radius. After clearing up those small sect, it was absolutely suitable for Chunyang Palace to settle in. In particular, these places were not the best, but they were by no means the worst. It could allow Chunyang Palace to develop peacefully for at least 10,000 years or even longer, but it would not have too much potential to threaten the major sect. The most important thing was that it would never let Chunyang Palace feel ashamed. It could be said that it took care of the interests of all parties. Before the transaction was reached, what all parties had to do was to thoroughly investigate these places to see if they really had huge development potential. Once the signs were found, they would resolutely change the place. The cooperation of all parties was actually mutual calculation in mutual cooperation, which was the norm. Before the decision was made, Yang Chen was kept in the Green Jade Immortal Island by the Green Jade Immortal Island with various reasons for hospitality. Today, an elder wanted to meet Shi Shanshan's husband. In a few days, there would be a grand auction in the Green Jade Immortal Island sect to invite Yang Chen to participate, or a few alchemy masters would communicate with Yang Chen. In short, there were sufficient reasons for Yang Chen to stay in the Green Jade Immortal Island willingly. When a super sect made a move, it was just that comprehensive. Yang Chen also seemed to know the reason, so he was very cooperative. Anyway, he and Shi Shanshan haven't seen each other for more than 100 years, so he wanted to accompany her. In the sect, Shi Shanshan had many elders who took care of her, and she needed to thank them. In short, in order to let Shi Shanshan hold her head high in the sect, she needed to socialize. While thanking them, Yang Chen did not forget to give each of them a barrier-dispelling pill. Regardless of whether they had reached that realm or not, it was still useful. Even if a cultivator didn't know what the barrier-dispelling pill was, once they heard of Yang Chen's name, they would solemnly put it away. They stayed in the Green Jade Immortal Island for half a year. In half a year, the major sect did not even decide on a place. The Green Jade Immortal Island had no reason to keep Yang Chen. If he continued to stay, he was afraid that it would be misunderstood. Therefore, when Yang Chen resigned, the high-level officials of the Green Jade Immortal Island also rarely came forward to see Yang Chen off. "The place you requested is being cleaned up for you." The former island master also gave Yang Chen a timely reply, which could be considered as giving him an explanation. After all, they had already promised to trade, but they couldn't come up with the bargaining chip. It could be said that the Green Jade Immortal Island was in the wrong. Don't worry, when you are ready, you can deliver it. Yang Chen was not worried at all that the Green Jade Immortal Island would renege on their debt. They had already seen the effect of the barrier-dispelling pill with their own eyes, so he was not afraid that they would go back on their word. Since he wanted to do it, Yang Chen would do it thoroughly. Therefore, he directly took out the jade slip that recorded the pill recipe of the barrier-dispelling pill and handed it to the former island master. This pill recipe is accepted by the senior. When the site is ready, hand it over to this younger generation junior. For the Green Jade Immortal Island, this was definitely a huge surprise. Even if they knew that their own sect would never renege on their debt, but Yang Chen's trust still surprised them. After several high-level officials got the pill recipe, they suddenly felt that their design for the Chunyang Palace was not very righteous. This idea only appeared for a moment, and then it disappeared immediately. Who could sit in the high-level position of this kind of super-sect? Who was impulsive? Soon, they stabilized their minds and began to study this pill recipe. Unexpectedly, the pill recipe was very simple. It wasn't complicated at all, and the masters who cultivated to their level would always have some understanding of medical skills and alchemy. They thought that this pill recipe for a true immortal master to break through the bottleneck would be very complicated, but it turned out to be so simple that even they could understand it. The pharmacology was too simple. It was nothing more than using some medicinal materials to make the person who took the medicine weak and sick. If one had to say that it was not simple, it would be some high concentration of devil chi and monster chi. This should be said that in the mortal world and the spiritual world, everyone had seen it. The elixir refined from such an elixir recipe could help an infinite tribulation true immortal break through the bottleneck? Are you kidding me? Everyone's first reaction after seeing the pill recipe was like this. But then everyone began to be puzzled. According to the performance of the disciples after taking the medicine, it was indeed the effect of this pill. It made people uncomfortable for a few days. The problem was that they began to slowly break through a few days after taking the medicine. Every one of them was like this. What was going on? This kind of important pill recipe was naturally studied by the 9th grade alchemist master of the Green Jade Immortal Island. In terms of medicinal pills, when the senior members of the Green Jade Immortal Island faced this master, they were definitely amateurs among amateurs. Whether it was right or not, it was up to the old man to decide. After carefully studying the pill recipe and the medicinal pill given by Yang Chen before, it was necessary to absorb it, and the alchemy ancestor nodded with certainty. This medicinal pill was refined using this pill recipe. The medicinal ingredients were completely correct, no more or less, just right. Even the ancestor was amazed that Yang Chen, a junior, could refine the medicinal pill to this point. Since even the ancestor confirmed that the pill recipe was correct, everyone no longer doubted it. Although it was not clear why such a simple pill recipe could solve such a big problem, as long as the medicinal pill was effective, it didn't matter if they didn't understand pharmacology. Although the ancestor had already nodded, the most important thing was to actually test it. As long as the refined medicinal pill could achieve the effect, naturally there would be no more trouble. The 9th grade alchemist master ancestor personally went out, and soon the Green Jade Immortal Island had enough medicinal materials. The high concentration of demonic chi and monster chi was the most troublesome. It was not known how many disciples' pockets were searched, and finally enough demonic chi and monster chi were collected. The 9th grade alchemist master personally condensed it, and it finally took more than 3 months before the requirements of alchemy were met. The medicinal pill was not complicated. The 9th grade alchemist master directly refined the 9 revolutions golden pill. After the pill was completed, it was directly given to a disciple with enough status and enough cultivation base. The medicinal effect was much stronger than Yang Chen's 8th grade medicinal pill. After the 9 revolutions golden pill went down, The disciple was almost tossed into a coma with vomiting and diarrhea. He lost half of his life and finally resisted for more than 2 months before he recovered. Everyone realized that the effect was too strong. This was a medicine that made people weak. 2 strong masters could not stand it. After that, the disciples' cultivation immediately began to increase. The effect was exactly the same as that of the previous disciples who had tested the medicine. This barrier-dispelling pill was real. But it wasn't until this moment that the senior members of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, discovered the big pit left by Yang Chun. The high concentration of demonic qi and monster qi could not be collected. Chapter 2559. The outstanding level of the 9th grade alchemist master proved the power of Yang Chen's barrier-dispelling pill. Especially the coordination of the medicinal effect, with the level of Yang Chen's alchemy, it just made the person who took it feel uncomfortable for 10 days. It would not be too intense, and it could still achieve the desired effect. If it was replaced by the 9th grade alchemist master refining the 9 revolutions golden pill, the medicinal effect would be too strong, but it would almost kill the person who took it. In other words, this pill recipe was combined with the strongest alchemy level that Yang Chun could achieve, as if it was tailor-made. From this, it was not difficult to see the level of Yang Chun. He had brought his craftsmanship to the extreme, but it was a bit superfluous. This was the performance of a real master. Even the 9th grade alchemist master was full of praise and even sighed. At least when he was at the level of Yang Chen's cultivation base. He couldn't do it as perfectly as Yang Chun. The Green Jade Immortal Island was now in distress. The pill recipe was true, the medicinal pill was useful. The problem was that the raw materials for alchemy were gone. The high concentration of demonic qi and monster qi, since the demon realm and the monster realm were taken away, they have become extinct. Only the cultivators who had been in the demon realm, the monster realm and the spiritual realm had some stock in their hands, but it was far from reaching the high concentration standard. Collecting it, even the 9th grade alchemist master had to refine and purify it for 3 months before it could be used. In the huge Green Jade Immortal Island, all the demonic qi and monster qi that had been collected from the disciples were only enough to refine a furnace of pills. The 9 revolutions golden pill consumed more materials than the 8 revolutions refining, so there was no more source after only 1 furnace was refined. The Green Jade Immortal Island was like this. Presumably other sect would be no exception. Whether it was the demonic qi or the monster qi, all the cultivators in the sect at that time used it as a means to hone their cultivation base. Who could have thought that it could also be used to refine this kind of barrier-dispelling pill? If these 2 raw materials were removed from the barrier-dispelling pill, the effect would be far less than the current effect. After all, the main principle of the barrier elimination pill was not only physical conditioning, but also mental conditioning. Even if the people of the Green Jade Immortal Island did not know the real principle, they could imagine the consequences of the lack of these 2 raw materials. The 9th grade alchemist knew about this situation and frowned as he removed these 2 raw materials and replaced them with some other similar materials. He wanted to see if he could find a substitute. In the end, after the medicine was refined again, the disciple who tested the medicine felt uncomfortable after taking it. He vomited and had diarrhea, felt dizzy, and lay on the bed for more than a month. Only then did his body slowly recover, but his cultivation remained the same. There was no progress at all. In that case, the high concentration of devil qi and demonic qi were the real main ingredient. After confirming this news, the senior members of the Green Jade Immortal Island were not happy. There was no other reason other than that they could no longer find the source of these medicinal herbs. There was no difference whether they had the pill recipe or not. The cultivators who ascended from the spiritual world all knew that the monster realm was refined by Gong Suanling's Mountain River geographical map, and it was even likely that the demon realm was also refined by Gong Sunling. In other words, Only Yang Chen's family could easily get a high concentration of devil qi and demonic qi. No wonder Yang Chen was so generous and delivered the goods before receiving the payment. It turned out that there was still such a backup plan. But the people of the Green Jade Immortal Island couldn't help but appreciate it. People said that they trusted their sect, and they couldn't step on the trust of others. That was not a trap for Yang Chen, but the face and credibility of their own sect. After this understanding, when the Green Jade Immortal Island wanted to discuss with other sect to give the Chunyang Palace territory, they couldn't be perfunctory. At least they had to let Yang Chen nod with satisfaction. Otherwise, they could only look at the pill recipe. Yang Chen's trip during this time was actually a trip to pick up his wives and concubines. After ascending for more than 150 years, the women had received enough guidance in their respective sect, and it was time for the husband and wife to reunite. Coming out of the Green Jade Immortal Island, Yang Chen's family went straight to the Blue Cloud sect to pick up Sun Qingxue. It was almost exactly the same as the process in the Green Jade Immortal Island. After giving the gift of the barrier-dispelling pill and staying in the sect with Sun Qingxue for more than a month, giving the Blue Cloud sect enough time to test the medicine, the high-level members of the Blue Cloud sect came to the door. The two sides have cooperated many times from the mortal world to the spiritual world, plus the news from the Green Jade Immortal Island. The Blue Cloud sect did not say anything and directly bought the pill recipe at the same price. After getting the pill recipe, they asked the strongest and only 9th-grade alchemist master in the sect to refine it. However, the Blue Cloud sect learned the lesson of the Green Jade Immortal Island and did not directly refine the 9 Revolutions Golden Pill, but only refined it to the 8th grade and began to let the disciples try the medicine. In this way they saved some raw materials, and secondly, they would not let their own disciples suffer more because the effect was too strong. Of course, there would be no problem with the pill recipe, the problem was the raw materials. The same problem, the same consideration, the high concentration of demon qi and high concentration of monster qi could only be provided by Yang Chen, so it was necessary to consider the weight of the bid. This Yang Chen, does he often do some exclusive business? The sect master of the Blue Cloud sect asked the sect master of the spiritual world, who had just ascended at the high-level meeting. The high-level members were really dissatisfied with this situation of being in the hands of others, and they must understand it clearly. Indeed, the sect master of the Blue Cloud sect in the spiritual world was completely a junior in the face of these high-level members. He replied very respectfully, "The spiritual world's dwelling spirit jade is the exclusive business of Chunyang Palace. It is because Master Yang discovered a yellow spring jade lode in the mortal world. Other cultivators don't know the goods, only Master Yang brought it to the spiritual world. He was an executioner of the immortal executioner stage. It's not surprising that he knows something that everyone doesn't know." An elder among the high-level members was not surprised by this. The things that those prisoners told him before they died, any one of them is estimated to be a big secret. Everyone was sad about this, and they were envious of Yang Chen's luck. But the envy was only for a short time. Everyone had their own opportunities, and everyone had their own path. Yang Chen's experience was indeed enviable, but it was not to the point of crazy pursuit. At their level, they were already able to let go of these things. The next thing was easy. Since they could confirm that there must be a large amount of high concentration of demon qi and monster qi in Yang Chen's place, the Blue Cloud sect also began to choose the territory carefully. Almost the same process, the same experience, Yang Chen received the Murong sisters from the Five Elements sect and Shi Wushuang from the Qiankuan sect. At this point, all the wives and concubines of the Dao sect had arrived. Yang Chen's family did not delay and went straight to the demon sect's Yin Yang Demon School. This time, their target was Lady Fenghua and the 30 concubines. The reputation of the barrier-dispelling pill had also spread from the 4 sects to all parts of the immortal world. For a moment, the immortal world was in an uproar. Chapter 2560. Which cultivator who could ascend to the immortal realm would think that he was a good-for-nothing? Which one of them was not talented, and had gone through many hardships to ascend to the immortal realm? What was the reason? Wasn't it to pursue the transcendence of living as long as heaven and earth? The problem was that all the cultivators knew that after reaching the level of true immortal, there would be bottlenecks in the process of cultivation. If they could overcome the bottleneck, their cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds, and they would be one step closer to their goal. If they could not overcome the bottleneck, they could only be trapped in that bottleneck until they grew old. Previously, Yang Chun had excavated at least 6 immortal tombs, but he could not overcome the bottleneck and had to die with regret. Now, Master Yang Chun suddenly introduced a kind of barrier-dispelling pill that could help true immortals break through these bottlenecks. Those cultivators who had been trapped in the bottleneck were so impulsive that they almost rushed to Master Yang to buy the barrier-dispelling pill. No matter how much they had to pay, they had to buy the barrier-dispelling pill. Even those cultivators who had not reached that level were tempted. Who could guarantee that they would not be troubled by the bottleneck when they reached that level? Could be said that in the past few years, almost all the hot topics were related to Yang Chun and the barrier-dispelling pill. When Yang Chun arrived at Yin Yang Demon School, he received a higher standard of reception. The sect master of the immortal realm of Yin Yang Demon School directly came forward to give Yang Chun enough face. He even hinted that if Yang Chun liked other female disciples in the sect, he could take them away. Yang Chun could only decline politely. Lady Feng Hua and 30 concubines, these 31 enchantresses, had already made Yang Chun drown in the flowers. How could he ask for more trouble? Yin Yang Demon School was very straightforward with the sale of barrier-dispelling pills. The female sect leader patted her huge chest and promised Yang Chun that she would find a good sect territory for Yang Chun and would never let Chunyang Palace be buried. Yang Chun visited all the sect that was directly related to him by marriage. As for the remaining super sect, Yang Chun visited them one by one. After all, he was a junior who had just ascended to the immortal world, so it wasn't shameful for him to pay a visit. After taking turns to go around, he finally visited all the super sect and reached an agreement with everyone. He would have to wait for the major sect to hand over the pill formulas to the territories they chose for him. In this big circle of the major sects, there was no one who didn't have eyes who dared to do anything to Yang Chun. After knowing the news of the barrier-dispelling pills, as long as Yang Chun approached their territory, they would immediately send masters to protect him secretly. Along the way, the major sect had secretly helped Yang Chun get rid of the guys who wanted to hurt Yang Chun thousands of times. Later, they even collectively spread the word that those who dared to hurt Master Yang would be the enemy of the major sect, which scared away many people with ulterior motives. Not to mention the major sect, even the guys who were suffering from the bottleneck of the innumerable tribulation true immortal also hated those who dared to hurt Yang Chun. If they dared to hurt Yang Chun, wouldn't it be the same as cutting off all their hopes? Many guys with ulterior motives were killed by the cultivators who were waiting for the barrier-dispelling pills to be on the market before they entered the territories of the major sect. After almost 2 years of careful selection, the representatives of the major sect finally came to a conclusion on the territory where they would buy the formula of the barrier-dispelling pills. All the parties drew an area with a radius of about 250,000 miles, which was equivalent to the major sect gathering the area with a radius of 10,000 miles, and handed it over to Yang Chun as the price for buying the formula of the barrier-dispelling pills. The small sect that used to be on this territory was cleared away by the major sect one by one. Some of them went to other places to develop, and some were annexed by the major sect. In short, there were no other eyesores in this huge area, except for some small individual cultivators. Those small individual cultivators had expressed their intention to attach themselves to the Chunyang Palace early on. Basically, this area completely belonged to the Chunyang Palace. After the experts of the major sect took turns to search the area, they confirmed that there were no hidden secrets except for the spiritual veins and mineral deposits that had been shown on the surface. Only then did they hand over the area. The search was very detailed, almost reaching the point of digging 3 feet into the ground. Some sect even specially sent out Earth escape masters to check the area hundreds of feet underground in detail. It could be said that this area was completely in line with Yang Chen's requirements, and there would be no major development. In the early tens of thousands of years, it was more than enough to settle the disciples of the Chunyang Palace who had ascended. However, that was all. If the Chunyang Palace wanted to rely on this territory to reach the level of the Sunset Rock, Linyang River, and Parting Hatred Sea in the spiritual realm, it would be impossible. This is the location of the sect you chose? Looking at Yang Chen standing in the middle of the area happily, Neza suddenly appeared. He was very puzzled about Yang Chen's choice. It's not as good as the few space caves we collected last time. What the hell are you thinking? Neza was not the only one who was puzzled. Even the women did not understand what Yang Chen was up to. Neza just asked the question they wanted to know, and they were also waiting to listen to Yang Chen's explanation. Except for Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, Zhou Xianying, and Tao Junqi, it was the first time for the other women to see Neza, and they did not know who he was. But since he came out of the Mountain River geographical map, he must be a friend, not an enemy, so no one was surprised. This is the place of the sect, but it is not. Yang Chen's words made everyone confused. What did he mean by it? However, no one continued to ask. Yang Chen would definitely explain it to the big families. When the disciples of the Chunyang Palace ascend, they must come here to gather and report first. Yang Chen explained with a smile. Not only did Neza have to know, but he also had to let all his wives and beauties know. Therefore, this is considered a sect on the surface. After gathering here, we will go to the real sect. In the future, Wanbao Tower will at most open a huge marketplace here. It's boring. It's the same thing as the sect and the cave abode of the sect. Neza shook his head directly. Although this was what most of the sect did, Neza did not like it. What he liked the most was the straightforward style, not the kind that kept moving around and hiding. I also said that the real sect can't be collected now. Yang Chen could not do anything to Neza, so he could only explain, if you can deal with the three-eyed senior and restore the market, maybe we can try. Neza had been curious about the real sect that Yang Chen had mentioned before. But Yang Chen had said that his cultivation was not enough, and he needed the help of masters. He could not solve the conflict between Yang Chen and Yang Chen, so he had been dragged here and there by Yang Chen. In the past 100 years, Neza's injury had almost recovered by 30%, which made Neza's confidence greatly increased. Now that Yang Chen said this, Neza was also inspired by Yang Chen. What are you afraid of? Let's go to him in a few years and see what his attitude is. Husband, who is this senior? Sun Qingxue looked at the unfamiliar Neza and asked in a low voice. Chapter 2561. When Yang Chen took the last cave abode, Neza felt that his injury seemed to have reached a critical moment. At the same time, he had a lot of insights in his heart, so he chose to meditate in seclusion. These years, Neza basically didn't come out of the Mountain River geographical map. Yang Chen went to see him alone. Later, the women who returned to their families didn't know that there was a fierce killer in the Mountain River geographical map. The reason why Yang Chen visited all the sect at this time was that Neza didn't need to show up for the time being. Otherwise, Yang Chen didn't know how to introduce Neza to the sect, let alone make Neza hide himself. Neza's temper was not something that Yang Chen could understand. It took Neza 3 years to comprehend it, and during these 3 years, Yang Chen was already standing in the territory of his sect. That was why Neza asked Yang Chen curiously. This is Senior Neza. When Neza appeared, Yang Chen introduced Neza to his wives and concubines. They had been in the immortal world for more than 100 years and had been influenced by the sect for more than 100 years. How could they not know Neza's identity? Seeing Neza and their husband talking and laughing, the women bowed to Neza together. "Greetings, Senior." "You're welcome." Neza looked very happy. No one knew what he had comprehended. Anyway, he seemed to be in high spirits and his injury had greatly improved. He waved to the women as a return greeting. After looking at the women for a while, he turned to Yang Chen and stared at Yang Chen. Suddenly, he fell into silence. Yang Chen was a little confused by Neza's gaze. He looked at himself carefully and didn't find anything wrong. Why did Neza look at him like this? "Boy, you're so lucky." Neza suddenly opened his mouth. What he said almost made Yang Chen stumble and fall. Was this what Neza should say? However, it seemed that Neza hadn't finished speaking. He continued, "Moreover, your wives and concubines are all very talented. Why do I feel that all the genius fairies in the world have been plundered by you?" How good was Neza's eyesight? Although Yang Chen's discovery of the acquired spiritual root had been spread to the immortal world for less than 4,000 years, and Neza had only heard about it through hearsay. It was not until Yang Chen gave him the most complete version, but now, he could see through the aptitudes of the girls with just a glance. Even Neza, who was experienced and knowledgeable, was shocked to see so many cultivation geniuses. "So that's how it is." Yang Chen let out a long sigh and laughed. "If you're envious, then be envious. I won't laugh at you." Tisk. Neza looked at the back of Yang Chen's head and turned to Shanshan. He suddenly asked, "Why do you have a familiar aura?" "Of course I'm familiar." Yang Chen answered for Shanshan, so that Shanshan's cold expression and tone would not make Neza uncomfortable. "Shanshan has cultivated Ancestor Lu's supreme pure yang sword qi. You must have seen it before, right?" "No wonder." Neza suddenly understood and nodded. As soon as she saw Shanshan, she felt a sharp sword qi threatening her. When she heard that it was the supreme pure yang sword qi, she felt relieved. Only the sword qi of that ox nose could make her feel this way. "In addition, this is my best wife who makes tea." Yang Chen then introduced, "Didn't you laugh at me for not being good at making tea? I'll let you see what a real tea ceremony is." Yang Chen still remembered the last time when Neza laughed at him for not being good at making tea. At this time, he had to get back at him. When Shanshan took out her tea-making utensils, Neza kept nodding. This was not an ordinary tea set. It was carefully made by Gao Yu for Shanshan. The material was the peach branch of Ah Zhu's real body. A sip of tea would naturally have the effect of prolonging one's life. Just these teacups and teapots alone made Neza speechless. When Shanshan poured the tea into the fragrant-smelling cup, Neza stretched out his nose and sniffed crazily. His expression was so funny. At this time, no one seemed to think that he was the famous murderous demon king in the immortal world. He was just a tea guest who seemed to be sincere. After 3 cups of tea, Neza nodded with satisfaction and gave Shanshan a thumbs up. Seeing Neza's praise, the cold Shanshan also showed a rare smile on her face. Taking advantage of the moment when everyone was happy, Sun Qingxue quietly asked Yang Chen, "Husband, who is the 3 eyes you are talking about?" "Yang Jian, Erlang Shen." Neza's ears were sharp. When he heard Sun Qingxue's question, he answered for Yang Chen, "It's the guy who keeps dogs." Puff. Yang Chen spat out the tea he just drank. Neza said that Yang Jian was the guy who kept dogs. This answer was really unexpected. Yang Chen thought that Neza would say that he was his big rival, or even an old friend. Who knew that he would say that he kept dogs? Strictly speaking, there was nothing wrong with what Neza said. But Neza, could you not tell the truth in front of Yang Chen's beautiful wives and concubines? Don't you see how shocked all the girls are? The women were indeed shocked. Even if they had never seen Yang Jian's power, they had heard of his bravery. So far, the new heavenly court did not dare to publicly arrest Yang Jian, Neza, Ancestor Lu, and the others. They only dared to search in secret. This was the proof. When many cultivators talked about Yang Jian, they all had an expression of admiration. Yang Jian's image in their hearts had long been fixed. They could not accept that he suddenly became a guy who kept dogs. However, they had also heard of Neza's reputation. He was an expert at the same level as Yang Jian. In the Battle of the Heavenly Court, many experts besieged him, but he was still fine. It seemed that only an expert like him could say such a thing. This was where his confidence came from. In any case, Yang Chen finally got a place in the Immortal Realm to use as a mountain gate. These years of running around without a root and foundation were finally over. In the future, after the disciples of Chunyang Palace ascended, there would be a very clear place to settle. When Yang Chen arrived at the largest spirit vein in the area, there were already many cultivators waiting there. These were basically individual cultivators who wanted to join Chunyang Palace. Their cultivation was high and low. When they saw Yang Chen and the others coming, they all greeted them. These individual cultivators were not very powerful in the Immortal Realm. If it was an ordinary sect, they might not join. The big sect did not need these individual cultivators. Those who had the conditions had already joined. It was not easy for Chunyang Palace to suddenly appear. While it was full of potential, it had no foundation in the Immortal Realm. This was equivalent to being a senior disciple as soon as they joined. This kind of opportunity was rare in the Immortal Realm, so many individual cultivators were tempted. Chapter 2562. There were no less than thousands of cultivators who came directly to Yang Chen. Every cultivator looked very eager, which made Yang Chen a little sigh. In his previous life, he was not even as good as these rogue cultivators. However, there was no need to sigh now. Yang Chen was not the Yang Chen of his previous life, and Chunyang Palace was not the Chunyang Palace of his previous life. Everything had changed. With a wave of his hand, all these cultivators who wanted to join Chunyang Palace joined Chunyang Palace and became temporary registered disciples. If they wanted to become official disciples, they had to wait for the head of the palace and other high-level officials to ascend and screen them one by one. Only after they met the loyalty conditions could they really join Chunyang Palace. With this group of thousands of new forces, the next thing was simple. The construction of the mountain gate, the construction of pavilions and the construction of the market, everything was handled by special personnel. On the land of hundreds of thousands of miles, large-scale construction was carried out, and it was a scene of prosperity. It took Yang Chen 5 years to sort out and digest this land, and it was slowly settled down. The mountain gate of Chunyang Palace also took shape, and the order everywhere was restored. Next, the major sect received an invitation from Yang Chen as the young palace master of Chunyang Palace. The largest commercial institution under the name of Chunyang Palace, Wanbao Tower, would open within the year, and all parties were invited to attend. If it was just such a simple invitation, the major sect would not pay too much attention. It was just a Wanbao Tower. Under each sect there were no less than dozens of similar commercial institutions, and the scale was 10,000 times larger than Wanbao Tower. However, the opening auction of Wanbao Tower attached by Yang Chen not only auctioned many treasures that everyone had heard of, but also auctioned 2 special materials, a high concentration of devil energy and a high concentration of demon energy. No matter how good the magic weapon was, would the high-level officials of the major sect not see it? Usually, an ordinary foreign affairs elder would be sent to participate in such an invitation. Everyone would just give each other face and support each other. However, when there was a high concentration of demon chi and demonic chi among the items being auctioned, the upper echelons of all parties could no longer remain calm. This was the first time that Chunyang Palace had sent an invitation since the establishment of the Immortal Realm. This was obviously a signal. If they did not support Chunyang Palace at this time, they would have to find a way to collect devil chi and demon chi all over the world in the future, or the price would be so high that it would make them feel distressed. As a result, each major sect sent at least one core member to go straight to Chunyang Palace. Some sect even sent two. The purpose of this trip was not only to support Yang Chen, but also to establish a long-term business relationship with Yang Chen. The target of the business was, of course, the high concentration of demon qi and demonic qi. If they had to buy it from the auction every time, not only would the quantity be insufficient, but the price would definitely be distressing. However, if they wanted to establish a long-term business relationship with Yang Chen's long-term supply, they could buy these at a relatively low price. The bottleneck dispelling pill was needed by every cultivator. According to Yang Chen, they needed to take it once in about 1,000 years. It was definitely a long-term business, and they could not be careless. The cultivators of the small sect and the individual cultivators did not know that demon qi and demonic qi could be auctioned. Many people laughed when they heard the news. Was Chunyang Palace crazy about money? Did they want to cheat money by getting some demonic qi and demon qi that everyone knew before? Many people were laughing at Yang Chen for making a fuss over a minor issue and overestimating himself. But when they heard the reactions of the major sect, these guys who had laughed at Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace not long ago all shut their mouths obediently. It might be okay to laugh at Yang Chen, but if they dared to have this kind of attitude towards the major sect, they would really be impatient. At this time, these guys began to take Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace seriously. Don't look at Yang Chen's reputation, but for many people, the legendary person had nothing to do with themselves. Unless it was necessary to have contact with him, they would not really understand him. If they calmed down and looked at it, the things auctioned at the Wanbao Tower auction were really good. Yang Chen took out a batch of things that he had plundered from the Immortal graveyard over the years and used them as auction items. These things might be rubbish in the eyes of Neza, but in the eyes of ordinary cultivators, they were definitely the treasures of treasures. In particular, some of the famous magic treasures were simply legends for many cultivators. Now that they had the opportunity to buy legendary magic treasures with spirit stones, what were they waiting for? Countless cultivators rushed to the marketplace where the Wanbao Tower was located in group. In less than half a year, the marketplace where a small sect was located had completely become a huge marketplace comparable to the Sunset Rock in the spiritual realm. There were all kinds of shops and crowds of people, which fully reflected the attraction of Yang Chen in this regard. There was still some time before the auction. Yang Chen began to receive the delegations of the major sect, and he was very busy. Fortunately, there was this group of new nominal disciples who joined the sect, and they barely managed to hold on. Neza must have had a new understanding. When Yang Chen was busy with these worldly affairs, he did not come out to make trouble, which was really a surprise. What was even more incredible was that his injury had recovered by at least 10% after the closed-door training. The speed of recovery made Yang Chen dumbfounded. It only took him more than 160 years to recover about 40% of his serious injury, which could definitely be described as a miracle. In this way, Yang Chen became more and more curious about what Neza had comprehended, but he had never had a chance to ask. At this time, if someone dared to attack Yang Chen, it was estimated that Neza did not need to show up. Just like when he attacked Yang Chen in the past, he could kill the opponent by revealing the tip of his spear. It could be said that Yang Chen's safety was really guaranteed. However, when another group of people appeared, Yang Chen did not know how to describe his feelings. This group of people appeared secretly, and they did not come to Yang Chen openly. Instead, one of them came to Yang Chen secretly. Because the other party appeared secretly and was masked, he directly attracted Neza's attention, and he wanted to kill him. However, Neza's attack was easily blocked by the other party. Then, the other party quickly revealed his identity, and Yang Chen hurriedly stopped Neza. Hearing that the other party was a friend and not an enemy, Neza returned and no longer paid attention to Yang Chen. The person who appeared secretly was none other than one of Madame Bai's maidservants. Usually, this maidservant did not attract much attention, but she had appeared in front of Yang Chen several times. With Yang Chen's photographic memory, he knew the identity of the other person when he saw the other person's face. Madame said that she wants you to enter the hidden place in the mountain river geographical map. This maidservant was only responsible for meeting and passing the message. After blocking Nez's attack, she immediately told Madame Bai's request. Naturally, Yang Chen did not object to Madame Bai's request. He immediately opened the mountain river geographical map and let her enter. Then, Yang Chen saw Madame Bai and a large group of maidservants. What was even more unbelievable was that there was a man among them. Chapter 2563. To be able to stay by Madame Bai's side and have Madame Bai snuggle up to him like a little bird without saying a word to all the maids around him, who else could it be other than Ancestor Lu Dongbin? Ancestor Lu looked very thin and very handsome. He was dressed in a clean white robe and had a sword on his back. He didn't look like an immortal at all. Instead, he had an indescribable sense of elegance and elegance. Madame Bai snuggled in Ancestor Lu's embrace intimately. Ancestor Lu didn't pretend to be sanctimonious just because an outsider like Yang Chen was present. He hugged Madame Bai intimately without any pretense and gave people a good impression at first glance. Madame Bai, who was in Ancestor Lu's embrace, only had one expression on her face: happiness. The happiness hidden between her brows couldn't be hidden from people like Yang Chen who were familiar with Madame Bai. Seeing how much Ancestor Lu doted on Madame Bai, Yang Chen didn't doubt that if Madame Bai wanted to become the Queen Mother, Ancestor Lu would immediately kill the new Jade Emperor and ascend the throne himself. Even though it was only the first time they met, this first impression made Yang Chen feel especially comfortable. For some reason, perhaps it was because Ancestor Lu also liked beauties, but Yang Chen felt that he and Ancestor Lu were indescribably congenial. Even though Ancestor Lu didn't say a word to him, Yang Chen had this feeling. While Yang Chen was observing Ancestor Lu was also observing Yang Chen. When he heard the name Yang Chen from Madame Bai, he was very curious about this junior's actions. However, he was very satisfied with Yang Chen because he took care of Madame Bai like a grandaunt in the spiritual realm. Madame Bai couldn't remember her identity in the spiritual realm, and it was the same for those maids. Therefore, Yang Chen definitely knew Madame Bai's identity. Now that he knew he was the executioner of the Immortal beheading platform, it wasn't strange for him to know that Madame Bai knew Ancestor Lu. Therefore, even if he was satisfied with Yang Chen taking care of Madame Bai, Ancestor Lu still wanted to test this young man. Yang Chen, this is my husband. Come and meet him. Madame Bai didn't treat Yang Chen as an outsider at all. She also addressed Yang Chen naturally. She didn't ask him to greet his senior, but to meet her husband. Madame Bai spoke casually, but Yang Chen didn't dare to be so arrogant. He hurriedly brought all of his wives and concubines to pay their respects to Ancestor Lu. The other party was Ancestor Lu, as well as Madame Bai's husband. Kowtowing a few times was something that should be done. It was not shameful at all. Greetings, senior. With Yang Chen's family in unison, under Yang Chen's lead, everyone respectfully kowtowed to Ancestor Lu 3 times. You are all good children, get up. Before Ancestor Lu could say anything, Madame Bai had already asked everyone to get up with a smile. Madame Bai had already spoken, what else could Ancestor Lu say? He could only look at Madame Bai dotingly and helplessly with a bitter smile. He watched as Yang Chen's family stood up and stood in front of him obediently, waiting for his instructions. However, Ancestor Lu didn't say anything to Yang Chen directly. Instead, he turned to Shi Shanshan amiably and said with a smile, You cultivated the supreme pure yang sword qi, come at me and let me see. Even though Shi Shanshan knew that the other party was the creator of the supreme pure yang sword qi, she was still shocked when she heard Ancestor Lu's words. Fortunately, she also understood that this was definitely Ancestor Lu testing her cultivation, so she didn't say anything else and replied, "Yes, Senior." She took a few steps back and got into a fighting stance. The Supreme Pure Yang sword appeared in Shi Shanshan's hand. Everyone moved away and waited for Shi Shanshan's sword Qi to attack. Seeing the Supreme Pure Yang sword in Shi Shanshan's hand, Ancestor Lu's eyes flashed with an insignificant light of praise. However, it was just a flash, and no one saw it clearly. Shi Shanshan didn't think that her Supreme Pure Yang sword Qi wouldn't hurt Ancestor Lu. There was no need to think about it. If a junior like Shi Shanshan, who had cultivated for less than 4,000 years, could use the sword Qi created by Ancestor Lu to hurt Ancestor Lu, then this world wouldn't be the same world anymore. Ancestor Lu wanted to see her cultivation, so naturally, she had to go all out. Holding the Supreme Pure Yang sword with both hands, Shi Shanshan bowed to Ancestor Lu and released her strongest attack. When the sword Qi was released, Shi Shanshan's body fell back softly. However, she only leaned back for a bit before falling into a warm embrace. She did not know when, but Yang Chen was already standing behind her waiting. The sword Qi whistled and directly pierced into Ancestor Lu's body, and then there was nothing. Ancestor Lu stood on the spot, not moving at all. That sword Qi that entered Ancestor Lu's body disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. Very good. Ancestor Lu nodded his head in praise, not stingy with his praise. You only cultivated for a few days and you already have this level, it's really not bad. In the future, you can tell others that you learned my sword Qi. Shi Shanshan was overjoyed. She didn't care that she had just eaten an essence-cultivating pill and hadn't fully recovered her energy. She struggled and bowed to Ancestor Lu again. Thank you, Ancestor Lu. This was Ancestor Lu. It was impossible for her to directly acknowledge him as her master, so calling him Ancestor Lu was just right. Ancestor Lu's words clearly meant that he recognized Shi Shanshan's cultivation, and recognized Shi Shanshan as his successor. Don't look at how Ancestor Lu is still the target of the current secret wanted by the Heavenly Court, but if any cultivator can enter the eyes of Ancestor Lu like Shi Shanshan, it was estimated that the cultivator would also be ecstatic. So what if the Heavenly Court secretly issued a wanted order? Didn't they see that they didn't even dare to issue a wanted order on the surface? Good child, it's this sword that's ordinary, your husband didn't even properly refine it for you. Ancestor Lu glanced at Yang Chen as if blaming him for not doing his best, then he turned to Shi Shanshan and said to Shi Shanshan, "Today is the first time we've met, I'll give you a greeting gift." As soon as he finished speaking, the Pure Yang Immortal sword in Shi Shanshan's hand was already in Ancestor Lu's hand, but no one knew how he did it. Yang Chen was really wronged by Ancestor Lu's glare and reprimand. What did he mean by not doing his best? When Yang Chen was in the spirit realm, it was already his limit to help Shi Shanshan refine the Pure Yang Immortal sword. If he wanted to refine it again, wouldn't that be a joke? But Yang Chen didn't dare to refute Ancestor Lu's words. Anyway, the benefits were going to Shi Shanshan, so Yang Chen was happy to take the blame and get a good immortal sword for his wife. What are you looking at? Just as Yang Chen was secretly happy, he suddenly heard Ancestor Lu's scolding. Hurry up and take out the materials you have? Are you waiting for me to help you find them? Of course, refining the immortal sword required better and more materials, not to mention that this was for his wife to get benefits. Yang Chen didn't say anything and immediately took out the materials he got. Because he didn't know which one Ancestor Lu was going to use, Yang Chen took out all the materials he had for Ancestor Lu to choose. Chapter 2564. When the sudden appearance of all kinds of materials instantly covered an area of 100 miles, even someone as knowledgeable as Ancestor Lu was shocked by Yang Chen's wealth. After reprimanding him, Yang Chen took a sip of tea from the maid next to him and spat it out. This was refining a magic treasure for his wife, and it was Ancestor Lu himself. How much face was this? How rare was this opportunity? At this time, there was no need to be afraid of not showing off one's wealth. Yang Chen was afraid that the materials were not enough. Not only metal element materials, but also materials of other attributes were not spared. Previously, Neza had taught him that it was not necessary to use pure attribute materials. Materials of other attributes might work. So, this was the first time Yang Chen showed off his wealth. Merit rings, all kinds of cosmos bags, dragon palaces, mountain river geographical maps, all the materials that could be found were spread out as if they were free. The area within a radius of 100 miles was filled in an instant. At this moment, there were still a lot of materials appearing continuously, and they were spreading to even further areas. If it was just ordinary materials, Ancestor Lu wouldn't have lost his composure like this. The crux of the matter was that everything he saw was a rare treasure even in the immortal world. Only an expert like Ancestor Lu knew what they were. Many of the things were fine products that most experts in the immortal world couldn't even name. Among the cave abodes that Yang Chen had plundered before, there were 2 or 3 that were basically warehouses. There were all kinds of rare materials. Perhaps the original owners of the cave abodes were all crazy collectors, or perhaps they wanted to make powerful magic treasures for themselves. In short, all the good things went to Yang Chen. There were so many treasures, but they weren't even as good as cabbages. They were just casually thrown on the ground, waiting to be picked. Even Patriarch Lu had never seen such a shocking scene in his hundreds of thousands of years in the immortal world. Except for Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, Zhou Xianying, and Tao Junqi, the other women had been cultivating in the sect all these years and did not follow Yang Chen to plunder cave abodes and immortal tombs. At this moment, when they saw their husband showing off his wealth, they were still shocked even though they knew that he was the richest cultivator in the mortal world. Even Yang Chen's wives and concubines were like this, let alone Madame Bai's maids. Even though they were all experts at the level of infinite tribulation true immortal and had seen a lot of things with Madame Bai, they had never seen such a scene. On the contrary, Madame Bai looked relatively normal. When she was in the spiritual world, Madame Bai had seen the scene of Yang Chen smashing people with spirit stones. Now this was equivalent to an upgraded version of that scene. After seeing it once, she had some immunity and did not lose her composure like Ancestor Lu. Madame Bai's delicate fingers secretly pinched Ancestor Lu's waist, and Ancestor Lu reacted as if he had just woken up from a dream. He had to admit that Ancestor Lu was shocked. He was shocked by this guy's big scene. It was not that Ancestor Lu would take these worldly possessions seriously, but the scene just now was so big and the rich atmosphere was really scary. Not bad, you're well prepared. Ancestor Lu did not feel embarrassed. He naturally scanned with his divine awareness and began to choose what he needed. Although they were spread out over a wide area, under the scanning of Ancestor Lu's spiritual sense, he could find anything he wanted immediately. This was an accident, but it was definitely a surprise for Shi Shanshan. Originally, Ancestor Lu just wanted to get some good things to help Shi Shanshan refine the pure yang, immortal sword. Now there were so many good things, and a group of juniors were looking at him eagerly. It was really inexcusable if he did not show some of his best skills. Gao Yu looked at the things Ancestor Lu selected with bright eyes. She wanted to learn some essentials of refining weapons from Ancestor Lu. This was Ancestor Lu. What he casually leaked from his fingers was enough for Gao Yu to learn for many years. Everyone watched Ancestor Lu pick a lot of things and pile them up. With just a stretch of his hand, these things were smelted in an instant and turned into a uniform alloy. Just this move alone reflected Ancestor Lu's superb technique. However, at the moment when Ancestor Lu made his move, Yang Chen felt a familiar fire. It was just a fleeting feeling, and Yang Chen didn't have time to judge which kind it was. But what was certain was that his yin-yang heaven-burning fire already included that kind of fire seed. Shi Shanshan's pure yang immortal sword was directly thrown into the pool of liquid metal by Ancestor Lu. The next action, Ancestor Lu did it very quickly, but it was very clear. Everyone could see it clearly. Even how Ancestor Lu used his spiritual power to refine the pure yang immortal sword was clearly felt by everyone. Yang Chen could be sure that this was Ancestor Lu giving a big favor to his family. Otherwise, how could this kind of refining secret technique be shown like this? The relationship with Madame Bai must have played a big role in this. The spiritual realm had served Madame Bai for so many years. When he was carefully observing, Yang Chen suddenly felt that there was something wrong. There was another person beside him, and he didn't notice it before. Just as he was about to make a move, he suddenly relaxed. The person who came was Neza, an acquaintance. Neza waited for Yang Chen to come over to refine pills and heal his injuries every day, but he didn't see him for a long time. Neza went out to take a look, and Yang Chen was not outside, which made Neza feel strange. After so many years, Neza had long been familiar with Yang Chen's aura. With the effect of the universe ring and red armillary sash, he immediately noticed Yang Chen's location. Relying on the red armillary sash and the mountain river geographical map, he instantly came to Neza's side. Neza didn't even look at the various materials that were all over the mountain. They were all things that the great god Neza didn't want. However, in the past 100 years, Neza had also obtained a lot of good things from Yang Chen. They were all good things that could be used to upgrade the fire-tipped spear, the universe ring, and the red armillary sash. As long as his injuries were completely healed, he would start refining them. I was wondering who delayed Yang Chen's healing of my injuries. So it's you, Ox-Nose. Of course, Neza recognized Ancestor Lu. Seeing that Ancestor Lu was refining the pure yang celestial sword, he didn't care if his words would delay Ancestor Lu's work. He just said, "No wonder you can block my attack. No wonder. The showerhead is seriously injured." Neza called Ancestor Lu a ox-nose, but Ancestor Lu was not polite at all. He retorted without raising his head, "No wonder there's a smell of medicine dregs as soon as I came in." Although Ancestor Lu said that, his movements were not delayed at all. They were still so steady. He was refining a magic weapon for his wife. Of course, Yang Chen couldn't let Neza ruin it. He hurriedly turned to Neza and was about to say something nice, but Neza said first, "So you really have a relationship with this guy? I thought you were using the name of Madame Bai to keep up appearances." Chapter 2565. I've told you before that you'll be at a disadvantage if you're alone. Ancestor LV didn't stop and ridiculed Neza. "Look at me, I'm surrounded by people. No one dares to show up in front of me without tens of thousands of people. Even if you have a disciple, no one dares to provoke you when you have so many disciples and grand disciples." Neza was annoyed by Ancestor LV's words. He pointed at the smiling Ancestor LV and couldn't say anything for a long time. With his status, he couldn't go back on his words. Since he promised to give them a gift, he would give them a lot. But he was cheated by Ancestor LV, which made him very unhappy. "Okay, let's not shout, okay?" Neza lowered his head and stopped talking to Madame Bai. He turned to Ancestor LV and said, "Lu Dongbin, can you do it?" Those who besieged Neza were not ordinary innumerable tribulation true immortals. More than 8,000 experts were assisted by the formation, but Neza killed half of them and injured half of them. Just thinking about it was frightening. This was the demeanor of a peerless expert. Sure. Patriarch Lu was also straightforward. He quickly replied, "Neza, how did you get hurt like this? I don't remember those guys being so strong." "Xiaoxue, you damn girl, whose side are you on?" Mrs. Bai looked at this scene and laughed at Sun Qingxue. When she was in the spiritual realm, she was very close to Sun Qingxue. They were both of the wood attribute, so they had a lot in common in cultivation and other things. She was often coaxed by the seemingly pure Sun Qingxue. Neza could call ancestor LV Ox Nose, but Yang Chen wouldn't dare to call Yang Chen this guy, even if he was 100 times more courageous. At this time, he was worried that ancestor LV would be affected, so Yang Chen could only keep quiet. Everyone knew that it was just a chat between two peerless experts, and it had nothing to do with persuasion. At this moment, Yang Chen's eyesight could be seen clearly. Seeing the two experts acting like this, he immediately put away all the treasures within a radius of hundreds of miles. Then, he quickly prepared tables and chairs for Madame Bai, Ancestor Lu and Neza. As soon as they were done, Gong Xuanling's dishes and Sun Qingshue's wine were already on the table. Neza was annoyed. He was clearly showing off, but he really couldn't retaliate. Fortunately, Sun Qingxue, the well-behaved girl, had sharp eyes and quick hands. She hurriedly came to Neza's side and imitated Madame Bai's way of serving Neza. To say who was the happiest person, it was definitely Yang Chen's family. Lu Zu's words had pushed Neza into an awkward situation. At this point, even if he didn't want to give a greeting gift, he had no choice. You want to try a formation that can fight against thousands of experts alone? Neza replied unhappily, explaining why he was injured. Perhaps he was embarrassed in front of Lu Zu, who seemed to be unscathed, so he couldn't help but add, but they didn't have it good either. Half of the 8,000 experts died, and the rest were all heavily injured. Even so, Neza still felt embarrassed in front of Lu Zu. But in the ears of Yang Chen's family, these words gave them a feeling of invincibility. Neza, who was in a good mood, enjoyed Sun Qingshue's service. Instantly, he felt much more balanced, and a smile appeared on his face. He turned his head and nodded at Sun Qingxue. Then, he reached out and stuffed something into Sun Qingshue's hands. You have the wood element. This is a lotus seed left from when my master helped me reconstruct my body. Take it and play with it. Lu Zu held the pure yang immortal sword in one hand and refined it in the air. Then, he sat down with a big smile. Madame Bai sat beside him gracefully. Before Lu Zu did anything, Madame Bai had already picked up a wine glass and brought it to Lu Zu's lip. Lu Zu leisurely drank the wine in one gulp. Then, he took a bite with the chopsticks that Madame Bai brought to his mouth. Then, he raised his eyebrows at Neza provocatively. The lotus seed that was produced when he reconstructed Neza's body was definitely a rare good thing in the immortal world. Sun Qingxue was instantly overjoyed. She couldn't hide the smile on her face. He really wanted to help God Neza. It was really worth it. Lu Zu's words were Neza's weakness. Neza's killer personality meant that he wouldn't like Lu Zu's method. Everyone had their own Tao. The Tao that was suitable for Lu Zu might not be suitable for Neza. If he really followed Lu Zu's words, Neza wouldn't be the current Neza. Yang Chen is a junior that I have high hopes for. I've acknowledged him as my godson in the spiritual realm. Madame Bai had always supported Yang Chen. She took over the conversation. Why? Showerhead, you don't like it? Don't worry, there will be plenty. Neza said angrily. After I recover, I'll buy some for them. But you, why are you so happy? I can tell that you're so poor that you've never given a junior a greeting gift. Lu Zu gave Neza a killing blow and teased him. What are you looking at? Don't like it? Don't you see that I'm helping this girl refine a flying sword? There's one after another, unlike some guy who acts dumb and doesn't have the airs of a senior at all. Neza was the incarnation of a lotus. So, whether it was Lu Zu or Madame Bai calling him Showerhead, Neza didn't even have a chance to refute. However, this title wasn't nice. He was called twice by Lu Zu and Madame Bai, and Yang Chen and his family were listening. This made Neza feel very embarrassed. Nothing. Didn't you hear what my wife said? She is Yang Chen's foster relative in the spiritual realm, so she is naturally my foster relative. Lu Zu smiled like a thief. I asked for something good for my junior. Can't I be happy? Madame Bai, it doesn't make sense for you to call me that. Neza was injured at this time, so he was no match for Lu Zu. Moreover, even if Neza didn't have any injuries, he could at most be on par with Lu Zhu. But Lu Zhu had Madame Bai and more than 1,000 servants of infinite tribulation true immortals. Neza was definitely no match for them in terms of martial art. Facing this situation, Neza could only swallow his anger. Fortunately, he kept calling her Madame Bai, which was enough to give her face. On the other hand, Madame Bai had a deep relationship with Yang Chen's family, and Shi Shanshan cultivated Lu Zhu's sword qi. Sometimes, it was reasonable for Lu Zhu to help refine a flying sword. After all, he was an elder. But Lu Zhu's words made Neza feel like he had to bleed, and the benefits were given to Yang Chen's family. Yang Chen couldn't wait for such a good thing to happen every day. Then why did you call my husband an ox-nose? Madame Bai didn't kill him. Instead, she made her attitude clear, as if she wanted to seek justice for her husband. Chapter 2566. Senior, please calm down. Yang Chen immediately jumped out and pretended to be a good person. He comforted Neza. Ancestor Lu was just joking, please don't take it seriously, Senior. You're not a good person either. Neza couldn't show his power to Lv, so he naturally vented his anger on Yang Chen. For so many years, I haven't seen you kill a few people seriously. All of them relied on cheating to solve 100,000 people. It's not good. Is there such a thing? Lu Zhu's eyes flashed. Looking at Yang Chen's gaze was different, full of appreciation. They only heard that at least 100,000 cultivators died because of Yang Chen, but they didn't know how he did it. Now, they finally got the answer from Neza. You're worth teaching. After looking at Yang Chen, Ancestor Lu's eyes turned back to Neza. After looking up and down, he smiled and asked, It turns out to be like this. No wonder I felt that there was something different when I saw you this time. Turns out that I was influenced by my younger generation. How is it? How does it feel to see someone kill 100,000 cultivators without even doing anything compared to you killing them one by one? Yang Chen's cultivation level was low. He knew that Neza must have changed, but he couldn't tell what it was. But who was Ancestor Lu? He noticed Neza's change when they first met. After hearing about these things, he almost instantly guessed the reason for Neza's change. Killing is killing. What's the difference between methods and methods? Neza snorted coldly and said bitterly. You should have understood long ago. Ancestor Lu shouted at Neza. Then, he picked up his wine glass with his empty hand. Just because of what you said, I deserve a drink with you. Neza didn't act pretentious. He picked up his wine glass and shook it with Ancestor Lu from afar. Then, he drank it in one go. Awesome! Ancestor Lu put down his glass and shouted. At this moment, the pure Yang Immortal sword in his hand was also completed, and he casually threw it to Shi Shanshan. I added some things for you, but I didn't dare to refine it. You can finish the rest yourself. If he refined it any deeper, this pure Yang Immortal sword would be tainted by Ancestor Lu's aura. This was the perfect time. Shi Shanshan was so happy that her eyes were almost invisible, leaving only a beautiful narrow slit. Yang Chen was truly happy for her. Boy, your wife is happy, why are you so happy? Ancestor Lu teased Yang Chen. It's not like she's giving you any benefits. Just now, Lv Zutsai said that he would give greeting gifts to us juniors one by one, so I'm very happy. Yang Chen was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth, and replied with a smile. That's right. Neza also joined in the fun. I also listened carefully. There's definitely such a thing. Don't learn from a poor person like me. Neza was quite happy to be able to mock Ancestor Lu. Of course, he was even happier that he met an old friend and was happy. Since I've spoken, I naturally mean what I say. I definitely won't go back on my words. Ancestor Lu replied with a smile. When he turned to Yang Chen, his expression became serious. However, there's something that we have to settle first. Please guide me, Ancestor Lu. Yang Chen didn't know what Ancestor Lu was up to, but he believed that Ancestor Lu definitely wouldn't say this for no reason. Therefore, Yang Chen respectfully asked Ancestor Lu for guidance. It wasn't easy for me to send my wife and the rest down there. I was hoping that they could earn more merit points before returning to the celestial world to reunite. Ancestor Lu didn't act pretentious and directly told the whole story. However, because of your interference, my wife didn't even receive half of the merit points that she was supposed to receive. How do you think this loss should be calculated? Ancestor Lu directly said that it was to let Madame Bai and the rest earn merit points. Yang Chen absolutely believed this. When Ancestor Lu said that Yang Chen and the rest stole Madame Bai's merit points, Yang Chen was also speechless and unable to refute. This was the truth. If it weren't for Yang Chen and his family, it was likely that Madame Bai and the rest who resolved the spiritual realm's tribulation of refinement would have been completely solved. They would have definitely earned a lot of merit points. However, because Yang Chen and his family refined the demon realm instead, most of the merit points that should have been completely collected by Madame Bai and the rest went to Yang Chen and his family. As a result, Madame Bai didn't even receive half of the merit points she planned to get. The rest all went to Yang Chen and his family. Yang Chen couldn't refute Ancestor Lu's words. However, if he wanted to repay Madame Bai's merit points now, Yang Chen also couldn't do it. Big Head's merit points had already been used by Big Brother Li Qing. Where could Yang Chen find a large amount of merit points to compensate Madame Bai? Pay up the merit points first, then talk about meeting gift. Ancestor Lu knocked on the table proudly and said, "I'm a reasonable person, let's not talk about this. I was the one who made him eat this portion of merit points." A voice that was familiar to Yang Chen's family and Madame Bai's group, but very unfamiliar to Ancestor Lu and Neza sounded in everyone's ears. "If you want to find someone, find me." Li Cheng's sudden appearance made Ancestor Lu and Neza very vigilant, especially Neza. Li Cheng's aura was clearly the aura of the expert that made him so fearful when he first met Yang Chen. Now, he finally saw the real person. "It's you?" Neza shouted in a low voice. "Why? Do you know him?" Ancestor Lu turned to look at Neza and asked. "If it wasn't for his aura that made me fearful back then, I would have killed Yang Chen long ago." Neza wasn't afraid of letting Ancestor Lu know that he was injured, so he told the truth. "Big Brother." Yang Chen heard Big Brother Li Cheng's voice, so he stood up and turned over. Yang Chen's wives and concubines also stood up and bowed. "Greetings, Big Brother Li." Li Cheng smiled and waved his hand at Yang Chen's family, indicating that there was no need to be so polite. He walked over casually and didn't forget to greet Madame Bai. "Madam, long time no see, you're even more beautiful." "Big Brother?" Ancestor Lu's expression suddenly became strange, and he asked Li Cheng, "Why, he called you Big Brother?" "Of course. What's so strange about that?" Li Cheng had a smile on his face, and he didn't feel any pressure when facing a top expert like Ancestor Lu or Neza. He naturally sat on the seat that Yang Chen quickly prepared for him and asked, "We've become sworn brothers of the opposite sex in the mortal world. Is there anything wrong with him calling me Big Brother?" "Ha ha ha ha." Ancestor Lu suddenly laughed out loud for no reason. He laughed so hard that his body rocked back and forth, and his voice was so loud that it traveled over 1,000 miles. In this space, Ancestor Lu's laughter reverberated almost completely, and no other sounds could be heard. "You're his sworn brother, so you're considered to be of the same generation." Ancestor Lu finally stopped smiling and said to Li Cheng. However, when he spoke, he couldn't help but have a smile that he couldn't suppress. "He calls me senior and has to bow to me. You're his sworn brother of the same generation, so you should bow to me and call me senior, right?" Chapter 2567. Bulsh *T. What shocked Yang Chen and the girls was that even though Brother Li Cheng was facing Ancestor Lu Dongbin, he didn't treat him as a junior at all and directly scolded him. Madame Bai's maids' faces changed as soon as he said that. If it weren't for the fact that Li Cheng was familiar with them in the spiritual realm and had a close relationship with Yang Chen, they would definitely attack him immediately. What was even more unexpected was Ancestor Lu. Li Cheng scolded him with **t, but he didn't get angry at all. He looked at Li Cheng with a cheeky smile and said, "Seniority is seniority, you can't deny it. F***ck off." Big Brother Li Cheng's words challenged everyone's nerves again. However, looking at Ancestor Lu's still laughing and gloating expression, even the stupidest person could see that Big Brother Li Cheng and Ancestor Lu definitely had a close relationship. This was clearly a joke between old friends. Yang Chen and the others were confused. Brother Li Cheng ascended all the way from the mortal world with them. What did he have to do with Ancestor Lu? If there was a relationship, it should be with Dao Ancestor. Madame Bai's maids also calmed down and quietly watched Ancestor Lu and Li Cheng bicker with a little amusement. This was a rare spectacle, even Neza watched with relish. "You can't go back on your word. You'd better come and pay your respects to Senior." Ancestor Lu was still holding back a smile on his face, but his tone was earnest and well-meaning as he pressured Li Cheng. "Senior, my ass, didn't you just live a few more years? Do you really think you're fat?" Of course, Brother Li Cheng wouldn't give in so easily. He didn't want to bow to Lu Dongbin as a junior. "Humph, you won't repent until you see the coffin." Ancestor Lu snorted at Li Cheng, but he no longer paid attention to him, and then turned directly to Yang Chen. "Kid, the pure Yang true fire that I left in the past, did you accept it?" Ancestor Lu was not so polite when facing Yang Chen, and directly questioned him. Yang Chen was shocked. What did Ancestor Lu mean? What did he mean by the pure Yang true fire he had left behind back then? "Back then, I had nothing to do in the mortal world, so I used a few names." Patriarch Lu faintly smiled and slowly said, "My name is Lu Yen, and I once used the name Heartless Prosperity. When I sent the peony down to the mortal world, I had nothing to do in the mortal world, so I used a certain fellow's surname. I used my original name and added the character Chang, calling myself Li Yanchang." Yang Chen's eyes almost popped out. Li Yanchang, wasn't that the name of the founder of Chunyang Palace? Why did Ancestor Lu use this name before? "I knew it. The name sounded familiar when I first heard it. Turns out it's just a trick you played," Neza chimed in. When he heard Yang Chen say that the founder of Chunyang Palace was Li Yanchang, he felt that he was familiar with the name as if he had heard it somewhere. It turned out that it was the alias of Master LV. "I have been lazy all my life. In order to find a few people to serve me, I casually created a small sect to be free and unfettered. I named it Chunyang Palace." There was a playful smile on Ancestor Lu's face, and he suddenly asked, "Do you know why it is called Chunyang?" "Because Senior's Taoist name is Chunyangzi." Yang Chen answered subconsciously, and his mind was already in a mess. The women behind Yang Chen were even more stunned. The small sect Chunyang Palace, which was originally unranked in the mortal world, actually had such a great background? "I also left a fire seed of pure Yang true fire in the secret chamber of the sect," Ancestor Lu continued to say proudly. "It is a fire seed in the style of an oil lamp, and there is also my secret seal on it. You can see it with a stab of pure Yang sword chi. Do you want to give it a try?" "No, Senior." Yang Chen quickly shook his head. Being able to say so many things, it has already shown that Ancestor Lu is not talking nonsense. Moreover, many sect knew about the fire seed of pure Yang true fire, but only the palace master and Yang Chen, who really got the fire seed, knew about it. It was absolutely not fake. Now Yang Chen remembered what the familiar fire seed was when Ancestor Lu refined the pure Yang Immortal sword for Shirshanshan. It was simply pure Yang true fire. Still calling him Senior? Seeing that Yang Chen had been shocked to this point, Madame Bai couldn't help but remind Yang Chen. "Greetings, Ancestral Master." Yang Chen reacted in an instant, and without saying anything, He pushed the golden mountain and jade pillar and directly knelt on the ground and bowed to Ancestor Lu. When Yang Chen bowed, Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, Zhou Xianying, and Tao Junqi were no exception, and they all bowed to the ancestral master at the same time. They were all disciples of Chunyang Palace now, and when they saw the ancestral master of Chunyang Palace, how could they not bow to him? The other girls also followed suit. This time, they followed their husband to bow to the ancestral master, not some other senior, and they were willing to bow to him. At this moment, there was only one point in Yang Chen's mind. This time, his ancestral master was such a powerful existence. As long as his identity was revealed, Chunyang Palace could completely do whatever it wanted in the immortal world. Neza was already stunned. After so many years with Yang Chen, he also knew from Yang Chen what a giant Chunyang Palace was in the mortal world and the spiritual world. Although it had just started in the immortal world, this would not prevent Chunyang Palace from becoming a giant in the immortal world in the future. He really didn't expect that Lu Niubai would have such an outstanding disciple and grand disciple, who managed a low-level sect to such a world. What made him even more envious was that with the great backing of Chunyang Palace, Lu Dongbin's strength in the immortal world would probably make many people sleepless. Lu Dongbin was already a headache. Not to mention his personal cultivation, his wife had a large group of powerful maids, not to mention that he had a wide circle of friends. With this fierce Chunyang Palace, it was absolutely like adding wings to a tiger. But this was also good. The one who would have a headache would not be Neza, but the guy sitting on the throne of Lingshao Palace. Ancestor Lu was now enjoying it. The first thing he enjoyed was the worship of Yang Chen and the girls' group of disciples and grand disciples. He didn't expect that Yang Chen could be so outstanding that he could develop the Chunyang Palace that he joked about in the past to such a point. Secondly, Ancestor Lu's eyes were fixed on Li Cheng. From the moment he saw Li Cheng, he discovered Li Cheng's true identity. Therefore, since Li Cheng and Yang Chen were really sworn brothers, he had to really enjoy the feeling of treating Li Cheng as a junior. Li Cheng also didn't expect that Ancestor Lu would have this trick. An unknown Chunyang Palace suddenly became the sect founded by Lu Dongbin. What was more, he didn't expect that Yang Chen and Lu Dongbin would really have this kind of relationship between a Grand Master and a Grand Disciple. This put Li Cheng in a difficult position. In the face of this old and frivolous Lu Dongbin, should he worship him or not? Chapter 2568. I do. Do you dare to accept? Li Cheng looked at Patriarch Lu's proud face and couldn't help but tease him. This sentence made Patriarch Lu, who was proud just now, suddenly deflate. He said reluctantly, I don't dare. Yang Chen and the others had already finished bowing and stood up under Madame Bai's signal. Listening to Big Brother Li Cheng's words, Yang Chen was even more shocked. What was Li Cheng's identity that made Patriarch Lu so afraid? Idiot! Patriarch Lu looked at Yang Chen and knew what Yang Chen was thinking. He couldn't help but scold him. This little guy was so smart most of the time, why was he so stupid in this kind of thing? But thinking about it, if Yang Chen really knew everything, then this Li Cheng, in front of him might not become good friends with Yang Chen, nor might he become sworn brothers with Yang Chen. In the end, this was Yang Chen's great opportunity. Sometimes, even as a patriarch, he was envious. In this world, including the entire 3 realms, who else with the surname Li can make me act like this? Patriarch Lu saw that Yang Chen was still not enlightened, so he directly reminded him. But the old man didn't just say it. He used this form of rhetorical question to let Yang Chen think about it himself. In fact, not only Yang Chen, but Neza was also confused. What Patriarch Lu said just now seemed to be reminding Yang Chen, but it might also be reminding Neza. In the 3 realms, there weren't many people with the surname Li that could make Patriarch Lu bow down. Dao Ancestor was definitely one, Iron Crutch Li was definitely one, and pagoda-bearing Heavenly King Li might not have such high prestige. As for the others, Yang Chen couldn't think of any more. However, Iron Crutchley had already entered the Immortal Executioner's platform and was beheaded by Yang Chen, so the only possibility left was Tao Ancestor. The problem was that the Tao Ancestor had also entered the Immortal Slaying platform and was also beheaded by Yang Chen. Who was this big brother Li Qing in front of him? The Tao Ancestor's personal disciple was definitely not one of them. A Tao Ancestor could make Patriarch Lu feel fear and respect for a Tao Ancestor, but a Tao Ancestor's disciple could not possibly have such high prestige to make Patriarch Lu lower his head. Could it be that big brother Li Qing was a Tao Father? Three Purities' secret art. Yang Chen's mind has never been so clear, and he suddenly thought of the key. I have also cultivated the Three Purities' secret art. If I am beheaded now, will I die? The answer was no. Although Yang Chen did not find two bodies to cultivate the split divine sense and did not use the one qi turning three pure ones, when his first divine sense split, Yang Chen still sent the divine sense seed to the immortal body in the mortal world. Once Yang Chen's body died, the spiritual consciousness seed in that immortal body would germinate and grow into another Yang Chen. How could the Tao Ancestor not do something that Yang Chen could do? At this time, a lot of things could be explained. Why did Yang Chen feel that big brother Li Qing had an immortal aura when he first saw him in the demon continent? Obviously, big brother Li Qing already had an immortal body at that time. Similarly, after so many years, Yang Chen had never seen big brother Li Qing cross any powerful heavenly tribulation. This was also explained. The immortal body had already passed all the heavenly tribulations, so every time it was just a normal heavenly tribulation. Just like the celestial immortal tribulation that Yang Chen's family experienced when they ascended from the spiritual world, they had already experienced it in the Mountain River geographical map, so when they ascended, it was just a matter of time. Knowing the situation of the big shot, knowing that the big shot had made a mistake, and even knowing the starting point, the abnormality that big brother Li Qing showed many times, which Yang Chen could not explain before, could only be attributed to the Tao Ancestor's personal disciple, but now there were more explanations. He even knew the order of killing immortals in the immortal beheading stage, and swaggered away the Tao Ancestor's Tianyuan pill. Didn't this explain a lot of things? The immortal beheading stage was refined by the Tao Ancestor himself, who was more familiar with it than him. Now, even when Yang Chen wanted to refine the entrance of the immortal beheading stage for the first time, he was scolded by big brother Li Qing for overestimating himself. Didn't big brother also help him find a way to refine the entrance of the immortal beheading stage with the Bailing battle armor in the mortal world? As long as he admitted the new identity of big brother Li Qing, all the doubts and abnormalities would be solved. Big brother? Tao Ancestor? When Yang Chen faced big brother Li Qing again, he was not so calm, because big brother Li Qing's identity was too shocking. Yes. Big brother Li Qing, no, Tao Ancestor, nodded, sat on the spot, and habitually tapped the table with his finger. Behind him, Sun Qingxue immediately served wine. Sit. What are you looking at? Are you waiting for me to treat you? Patriarch Lu was still complacent, and Neza was also shocked. He was awakened by the sound of Tao Ancestor tapping the table and walked over. Patriarch Lu still had a smile on his face, and looked very happy. He sat on Patriarch Lu's left hand without hesitation. Great God Neza restrained himself a little and sat next to Tao Ancestor's right hand obediently. You sit too. Tao Ancestor pointed to the opposite side. Yang Chen was overjoyed and sat opposite him happily. Now, the four of them sat in four directions, and a table of mahjong was full. Knowing the identity of the Tao Ancestor, and knowing the identity of Lu Zhu, a group of concubines, under the command of Gong Sun Ling, quickly made a table of palace dishes and sent them to the table. Everyone was very excited. Everyone was very clear about one thing. With the support of Tao Ancestor and Patriarch Lu, even if they poked a hole in the sky in the future, they would be protected. A great future was in front of them. Was there anything more exciting than this? Tao Ancestor, Grandmaster, what should we do in the Chunyang Palace in the future? Please ask. Yang Chen was the happiest one. Now that the patriarch had appeared, the sect finally had a backbone, and he didn't need to worry about it alone. Do what needs to be done. Patriarch Lu threw a sentence at Yang Chen in annoyance. Do you think I will run a sect for fun? You have done a good job all these years. Just continue. It's more than just good. Tao Ancestor took over the conversation and suppressed Patriarch Lu. They are the ones who worked hard. If they relied on you, an unreliable patriarch, who knows how many times the sect would have been destroyed. That's because my disciples and grand-disciples worked hard. Don't be jealous. Speaking of this, Patriarch Lu became more and more proud. Chunyang Palace didn't rely on his name as the patriarch to conquer the world. To be able to develop to such a scale, Yang Chen and the others really worked hard for him. Speaking of your disciples and grand-disciples, this junior of yours is exactly the same as you. Tao Ancestor couldn't help but start to complain. Wine, women, avarice, and temper are all not lacking. Every one of them is better than the master. It seems that the ancient saying is right. If you are not from the same family, you will not enter the same family. The juniors and grandchildren are like me, and they even carry forward the advantages of an old man. I can't be more happy. Patriarch Lu laughed out loud. If you are envious, go find your own suitable disciples. Don't be jealous. Chapter 2569. After teasing for a while, the Tao Ancestor asked about Ancestor Lu's whereabouts after the Heavenly Court's rebellion. Yang Chen and the Tao Ancestor knew Neza's whereabouts, so they didn't hear much. However, Ancestor Lu's uncertain whereabouts made people very curious. Ancestor Lu was able to send Madame Bai down to the spiritual realm tens of thousands of years ago, so he was obviously mentally prepared for this change. However, his whereabouts were indeed very surprising. Everyone had always thought that he was hiding somewhere in the immortal world, but they did not expect that until Tao Ancestor Yang Chen ascended to the spiritual world, he was simply living in the spiritual world. In terms of combat power, Ancestor Lu was definitely in the top 10 in the entire immortal realm. But in terms of laziness and idleness, Ancestor Lu was definitely in the top 10. However, it wasn't that Ancestor Lu was lazy in the spiritual realm, but that he was also tracking down the source of the three realms' instability. He wasn't like the Tao Ancestor, who knew that some big shot forcibly changed the order of the three realms, causing the accumulated chaos. By the time he figured it out, the Heavenly Court's rebellion had already been completed. Ancestor Lu also discovered the Zhao family's arrangement in the spiritual realm. However, in order to let Madame Bai get merit, Ancestor Lu deliberately didn't do anything. He let go of the opportunity and left it for Madame Bai to wake up later. As for letting Madame Bai sleep in the tomb, it was for the same reason as Yang Chen back then. Absorbing some qi of the earth vein was very beneficial to Madame Bai, who had the wood attribute. In the end, he didn't expect that the Tao Ancestor and Yang Chen would intervene and get a lot of merit for nothing. After ascending to the immortal realm, Ancestor Lu was too lazy to care about these disagreements in the new heavenly court. So during these days in the immortal realm, he wandered around like a wild crane, treating it as a tour in the immortal realm. Of course, he didn't forget to look for something that interested him while traveling. Some cultivators in the immortal realm are very interesting. Ancestor LV slowly said what he had discovered. I guess they are the Zhao family that you mentioned. If there's a chance, go take care of them. Yang Chen reminded Ancestor Lu tactfully. Ancestor Lu did not really discover the base of the Zhao family in the immortal world. Those cultivators were just the peripheral members of the Zhao family. It was not worth beating the grass and startling the snake now, especially when a large number of masters of the Chunyang Palace had not yet ascended, and their strength was still very weak. After listening to Ancestor Lu's story, Neza was finally convinced. He had been besieged by thousands of experts, beaten to death, and ended up in such a miserable state. But look at the Taoist ancestor and Ancestor Lu. One of them faked his death and easily arrived in the mortal world, while the other had long made arrangements for his wife to seize merit. They had made preparations in advance, and were much more brilliant than him, who only discovered and resisted at the last moment. I see that you have a lot of questions. Since everyone is in a good mood, ask as much as you want. The Tao ancestor saw that Yang Chen wanted to say something but hesitated. He said happily, "I will definitely answer everything that I can." Tao ancestor. Yang Chen said happily, but just as he opened his mouth, he was interrupted by the Tao ancestor. "We're sworn brothers, just call me Big Brother." The Tao ancestor still had the same temper as Big Brother Li Qing, which made Yang Chen feel very comfortable and excited. The Tao ancestor still recognized him as his little brother. Just his identity as the Tao ancestor's little brother was enough for Yang Chen to be unobstructed in the three realms. "Big Brother," Yang Chen called out, then carefully asked, "Since you knew that the heavenly court would rebel, why were you still willing to go to the immortal slaying platform? Why did you end my life?" Actually, not only Yang Chen, but even Ancestor Lu and Neza wanted to know. Others might not know the Tao ancestor's abilities, but how could they not know? There was only one reason why the heavenly court's rebels could succeed, and that was because the Tao ancestor went easy on them. But why, that was not something they could know. The heavenly court has indeed reached the point where it has to change. The Tao ancestor sighed and said, "Yang Chen, you might not know, but the two of you should know. Can the lifeless heavenly courts in the past still give you a sense of belonging?" Ancestor Lu and Neza looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. What a joke! If they could have a sense of belonging, they would not have pursued the rebels of the new heavenly court. Neza might have said that he was not strong enough, but Ancestor Lu was unharmed. He did not do anything to the new heavenly court. Even so, the Tao ancestor still did not say the reason why he was willing to sacrifice his life. "If I don't enter the immortal slaying platform, do you think those little fellows can live peacefully?" The Tao ancestor sighed and returned to the most important question. This was really a helpless reason, and even Yang Chen was very much in favor of it. If he were the new Jade Emperor and knew that the Tao ancestor was safe and sound, he would definitely not dare to ascend the throne. In addition, if you want to completely solve the problem of imbalance in the three realms, you can only start from the mortal world, the Tao ancestor continued. However, that reason was not enough for him to kill his main body. The Tao ancestor was concerned about a bigger matter. "If I go to the mortal world directly, I'm afraid the problem of the imbalance in the three realms will be even greater. So, I used a simple method. You, an unreliable ancestor, have caused so much trouble. You have also cultivated the three purities art. Do you know what I mean?" Of course, Yang Chen understood that the Tao ancestor must have left a consciousness seed in the mortal world back then. Once his main body died, the consciousness seed would immediately revive. However, what Yang Chen did not understand was that according to his understanding, once his main body died, the resurrected seed would only remember what happened when the seed was planted. It would not know what happened after. How did the Tao ancestor know everything? You will be able to do it after you cultivate the three purities art to the highest level. The Tao ancestor seemed to see through Yang Chen's doubts and explained directly, "At that time, you can transfer all the memories before your main body's death to the consciousness seed." "So that's how it is," Yang Chen nodded as if he was suddenly enlightened. He looked up and saw Ancestor Lu and Neza's dumbfounded expressions. "You actually taught him the three purities art on the immortal slaying platform?" If he hadn't heard the Tao ancestor personally instructing Yang Chen now, Ancestor Lu would have thought that he was listening to a fantasy story. Neza also had an expression of disbelief. The Tao ancestor actually passed all his trump cards to Yang Chen. Thinking about it, fortunately, he was suppressed by the aura of the Tao ancestor and did not dare to kill Yang Chen. Otherwise, it was estimated that he would not even have the chance to sit here. That was the Tao ancestor. Although he was feared in the immortal world, it was not much different if the Tao ancestor wanted to deal with him. Ancestor Lu and Neza were now very clear about the weight of Yang Chen in the heart of the Tao ancestor. Being able to pass down the three purities art basically meant that Yang Chen was the personal disciple in the heart of the Tao ancestor. In particular, this was a secret technique passed down in the case of Yang Chen's own refusal, which was even more surprising. Whether Yang Chen admitted it or not, this relationship was already a fact and could not be changed. This was the reason why Ancestor Lu and Neza were surprised. "Brat, you are so lucky!" Even Ancestor Lu had to laugh and scold enviously. Chapter 2570. Ancestor Lu and Yang Chen had the relationship of a grandmaster and a disciple of the younger generation. Therefore, only he and the Tao ancestor could scold Yang Chen. God Neza did not dare to underestimate Yang Chen easily. In addition, after the seed of the three purities incantation is revived, I will no longer have my divine senses split when I cultivate the three purities incantation. The Tao ancestor was clearly guiding Yang Chen's disciple in cultivation. Therefore, I can't use many cultivation techniques that can be activated by the three purities incantation in the past, including the technique to refine space. Yang Chen understood a lot more. Although the Tao ancestor had said that he could not be bothered to do it and asked Yang Chen to do it for him, that might be the real core reason. Since I met someone with excellent aptitude and comprehension on the Immortal slaying platform, why do I have to work so hard to nurture another successor? The Tao ancestor seemed to have seen through everything. His words made Yang Chen speechless about the Tao ancestor's choice. "You don't know how impressive this kid is in the Immortal slaying platform," the Tao ancestor said to Ancestor Lu and Neza. Almost all the elders of the heavenly courts who entered later left him many secrets. If he doesn't become a cultivation expert and a super rich person after he comes out, he will be sorry for these secrets. Ancestor Lu and Neza immediately flashed in front of their eyes. Not long ago, when Yang Chen prepared the materials for Ancestor Lu, the dense high-level materials that covered hundreds of miles, they all nodded as if they had a tacit understanding. In terms of wealth, Yang Chen was definitely in the top 10 of the immortal world. "Brother, what should I do next?" The previous origins and puzzlement were now clear. Yang Chen did not ask anymore. Instead, he asked about his future plans. The ancestral master said that he did not care, but he had to ask the Tao ancestor. "Do what you have to do." The Tao ancestor waved his hand and said, "Aren't you going to use the barrier-dispelling pill to open the situation in the Wanbao Tower? Just continue. By the way, now that you have a grandmaster, if there's anything in the sect, of course you have to look for your grandmaster." The Tao ancestor looked at Ancestor Lu and said with a smile, "In a few days I will go find an old friend. As for the matters here, let your patriarch take care of it." "It's my duty." Ancestor Lu readily agreed. This sect was originally created by him as a joke. Now that the younger generation of disciples had made a name for themselves, he, as the founder of the sect, would also be proud. Moreover, he would be able to help him, so why not? "By the way, can you tell me now which is the Real Gate of Chunyang Palace in your mind?" It was Neza who asked the question. This question had been on his mind for a long time, but Yang Chen had always used the reason that his cultivation was not strong enough to answer. Now that there was Patriarch Lu's family and the Tao ancestor, he believed that it was enough without Yang Jian's strength. Neza also took the opportunity to ask. Since it was related to Chunyang Palace, Ancestor Lu's attention was immediately attracted. To be honest, Chunyang Palace had developed well in the mortal world and the spiritual realm, but it had just started in the immortal realm. The stall in front of them could barely be regarded as a place to settle down, but it was still far from satisfying Ancestor Lu. Hearing that there was a Real Gate, Ancestor Lu also turned to Yang Chen and waited for Yang Chen's answer. Not only Ancestor Lu, but also Madame Bai, even the Tao Ancestor and Yang Chen's wives and concubines were very curious about this. Actually, my idea of the gate of Chunyang Palace was hinted by the Zhao family. Yang Chen saw that everyone was interested, and now it seemed that he was actually somewhat mature, so he no longer hid it and slowly said, "You all know that the Zhao family villa in the mortal world is on the back of Long Xian. Not to mention that it is erratic, ordinary cultivators can't resist a blow from Long Xian at all. This is an extremely genius idea, but it is very difficult to realize." Yang Chen was not stingy with his praise for the Zhao family villa. It was indeed a stroke of genius. "So you also have this style in Chunyang Palace in the spiritual realm?" The Tao Ancestor was very clear about the details of Chunyang Palace in the spiritual realm, so he interrupted and asked. "Yes." Yang Chen nodded and admitted. "The Earth Dragon's cultivation is strong enough, but his intelligence is not enough. If he ascends to the immortal realm, he will only end up being enslaved. It is better to stay in the spiritual realm and be the mobile core gate of Chunyang Palace. There are also countless disciples of Chunyang Palace who respect him." Ancestor Lu did not know this, but he also listened with great interest. Gao Yu, who was next to him, knew that Ancestor Lu did not know the details of Senior Earth Dragon, so she also explained it to Ancestor Lu in a low voice, and even let Neza on the opposite side understand. Hearing that the core gate of Chunyang Palace in the spiritual realm turned out to be in the belly of a great demon earth dragon at the peak of Golden Immortal, even Ancestor Lu, who had experienced many big scenes, was really shocked by Yang Chen's generosity. That was to say, Chunyang Palace did not want to dominate. Otherwise, this earth dragon alone would be enough to wipe out most of the sect in the spiritual realm. Since the spiritual realm was so generous, wouldn't the arrangement in the immortal realm be more exciting? Now Ancestor Lu began to understand why Neza was so anxious to know Yang Chen's arrangement in the immortal realm. Somewhere in the immortal realm, there is a very powerful great demon. Yang Chen did not keep them guessing. After Ancestor Lu and Neza knew about the arrangement in the spiritual realm, he said slowly, "Now it is just a koan, but in a few thousand years, it can turn into a pring." Yang Chen's words were understated. For those who did not know, it was just a great demon. It was estimated that Yang Chen also wanted to arrange the core gate in the great demon or in the body of the great demon. It was not surprising. It was nothing more than a great demon's body being big enough to accommodate many practitioners. Listening to the ears of these people in front of them, Yang Chen's words were like thunder. Kuan Peng was more than a great demon. It was okay when it was a Kuan, but when it turned into a Peng, it was not only powerful, but if it wanted to run, no practitioner could catch up with it. If Kuan Peng could become the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace, ordinary innumerable tribulation true immortals would not even have a chance to get close to it. The sect would be absolutely safe. Both Kuan Peng and Peng were big enough. It was said that a place on the back of a Peng without feathers had a radius of 19,000 miles, so one could imagine how huge its body was. On Kuan Peng, a sect was absolutely more than enough. The only thing to worry about was how to subdue Kuan Peng and make it willingly serve as the mountain gate. In particular, he could not let Kuan Peng be resentful in the future. Otherwise, if a sect was placed on him, it would be a disaster. Now Neza finally understood why Yang Chen said that their cultivation was not enough, and they needed at least 3 people, including Ancestor Lu, Yang Jian, and Neza. If it was really a powerful Kuan Peng, the 3 of them might not have a chance. Fortunately, there was one more Tao ancestor, which made everyone see the possibility of success. Chapter 2571. Why are you looking at me? Tao Ancestor asked in confusion when he saw everyone's eager eyes focused on him. Then he laughed and said, "Don't tell me you want me to take action?" Yang Chun, Ancestor Lu, and Neza nodded at the same time. They had the same idea. This isn't my sect, and I'm not some bullshit patriarch. Why should I do anything? The Tao Ancestor looked at Patriarch Lu with a grin. He didn't seem to have any intention of doing anything. Neza and Ancestor Lu had never seen such an image of Tao Ancestor, so they were stunned. If Tao Ancestor did not take action, the two of them might not be able to deal with a Koan. Although Tao Ancestor and Neza's combat power ranked in the top 10 in the Immortal realm, sometimes the combat power of some big demons could not be described by ordinary cultivation levels. Although the Immortal realm was big, there were still many places that were barren. It was hard to guarantee that there was a powerful guy who could easily kill an innumerable tribulation true immortal in a second in a corner. Although listening to Yang Chen's choice of the location of the Core Mountain Gate was really delightful, but when it was really achieved, it was extremely difficult. And what the Tao Ancestor said was also very reasonable. He and Yang Chen had a purely personal relationship, but this was the official business of the Pure Yang Palace. There was Ancestor Lu, the Ancestor, so it was not the turn of others to take the initiative. It was not that they could not take action at all, but since it was official business, there was no reason to take action based on friendship. There must be enough benefits. From this point of view, not only Tao Ancestor did not have a reason to take action, but even Neza did not have a reason to take action after Ancestor Lu appeared. It's a good idea to put the Core Mountain Gate on the back of the Koan, Ancestor Lu said thoughtfully, but it's a little too difficult. It was even more impossible for Ancestor Lu to subdue a Koan that was about to turn into a Koan, even with Madame Bai's help. If you can deal with that three-eyed guy, you might have a chance, Neza suggested heartlessly at the side. He had no reason to take action, but facing such a strong enemy, Neza was itching to take action. However, he was not stupid enough to face a strong enemy alone. Of course, he would drag Yang Jian down with him. LV Zhu nodded and did not dwell on this issue. However, Yang Chun still reminded them in time to be careful of the Zhao family when necessary. They hadn't found any trace of the Zhao family in the celestial world. Even though the spirit world was in chaos, the Zhao family hadn't jumped out. This was very unusual. Just this point alone was enough to make people vigilant. This old man is going to leave for a while to find a few acquaintances. After the Tao Ancestor finished eating and chatting with the three of them, he stood up and wiped his mouth. Without saying anything else, he bade farewell. Yang Chun hurriedly sent him off, but the Tao Ancestor waved his hand to indicate that there was no need. His figure disappeared in an instant, leaving only a voice that made Ancestor Lu not know whether to laugh or cry. "Ancestor, you haven't given us a greeting gift." This was obviously to help Yang Chun and the girls ask for the benefits that Ancestor Lu didn't fulfill just now. Yang Chun was happy in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He still looked respectful, which made Ancestor Lu feel embarrassed. Neza also joined in the fun. He was forced by Ancestor Lu to give the girls a greeting gift, so he naturally wouldn't let Ancestor Lu go easily. Neza still had an excuse to delay because of his injury, but Ancestor Lu had no excuse at all. If he didn't take it out now, he wouldn't be able to show his face in front of Neza. Ancestor Lu was generous. He wasn't a loner like Neza, who couldn't take out anything good other than his strongest few Dharma treasures. Just as the Tao Ancestor said, Ancestor Lu, who didn't lack wine, women, avarice, and temper, even if he wasn't as rich as Yang Chun, he could definitely take out a lot of things, and all of them were fine. Each of the girls had a material that was most suitable for their spiritual root attribute that could be integrated into their natal Dharma treasure, and a set of unique refining method to improve their natal Dharma treasure. Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, Zhou Xianying, and Tao Junqi were now disciples of Chunyang Palace, so the four of them had one more material than the other girls. As for Yang Chen, he didn't get anything, because he already had enough things. However, Ancestor Lu personally helped Yang Chen to integrate the great yin-yang 5 elements flying sword into one. With Ancestor Lu's cultivation, it saved him at least thousands of years of hard work compared to Yang Chen's personal refining. Before refining, Ancestor Lu, Neza, and Yang Chen discussed the overall feasibility. In line with Neza's opinion, Ancestor Lu also felt that the great yin-yang 5 elements flying sword's power was indeed scattered when separated, so it was more suitable to refine it into one. Of course, even Ancestor Lu had never encountered such a situation where every flying sword was a fine product but had to be integrated. If he didn't have the natal flying sword that he had used for his whole life, he might really be jealous and take 1 or 2 of them for himself. However, it was the first time that Yang Chen revealed his great yin-yang 5 elements flying sword in front of outsiders. The girls didn't mention it, Ancestor Lu didn't mention it, but Madame Bai admired every flying sword of Yang Chen, especially the 2 flying swords of wood attribute. Her eyes were shining and she nodded repeatedly. Yang Chen directly presented a medicine garden full of all kinds of rare plants to the Grandmaster's wife, which made Madame Bai speechless and satisfied. Ancestor Lu was also very concerned about this younger generation disciple, and he personally integrated and refined it. This time, he tried his best. In order to avoid his own aura from contaminating Yang Chen's natal magic weapon, Ancestor Lu and Yang Chen and Neza thought of many ways before finally adopting a means that Yang Chen had never thought of before. Xiao Tian was Yang Chen's monster pet. This was the kind of life and death contract. Therefore, it could be said that Xiao Tian's aura and Yang Chen's aura were the same and would not affect each other. All the refining work of Ancestor Lu was carried out through Xiao Tian. Only Xiao Tian, this Yazi, could do this. If it was replaced by any other monster pet, it would be impossible to achieve it perfectly. It must be said that Yang Chen discovered that Xiao Tian had Yazi blood in the mortal world and could recognize it. It was indeed the result of luck and strength. This method was quite laborious for Ancestor Lu. Ancestor Lu spent 100% of his strength, but he could only achieve 50% of the effect. But for Yang Chen, it was perfect. The magic weapon refined by Xiao Tian was exactly the same as the one refined by Yang Chen. There was no such thing as a life source magic weapon being contaminated. However, this loss was not an obstacle at all for Ancestor Lu. He was willing to pay for his outstanding disciple. Yang Chen did this for Chunyang Palace, which was worthy of Ancestor Lu's reward.